Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬996 on Wattpad. Now let's start. It was 3 o'clock in the morning in the city of Mustafu, Japan, where a green-haired boy named Izuku Yagi slept peacefully in his room. His life was wonderful. He had a loving family, good friends, and a very strong quirk. Actually, 3 quirks. One was called Moon God, which heightened his senses tenfold when the moon was out, allowing him to surpass human limits each night. The second was Miraculous Guardian, making him a determined protector of his family and friends. The final quirk, Brutish Nature, enhanced his aggression, strength, and durability, turning him into a fierce warrior. Unbeknownst to Izuku, someone was outside his window, watching him with admiration. This person was Ayano Aishi, who had been infatuated with him since kindergarten when he had helped her fend off bullies. Since then, she had kept a close eye on him, cherishing every moment. As she gazed at him, her heart raced at the sight of his soft green hair, freckled face, and warm smile. Ayano's thoughts wandered as she admired him, but her daydreaming was interrupted by the sound of a doorknob jiggling. Quickly, she climbed onto the roof to hide. She wondered who could be awake at such an hour. Peeking into Izuku's room, she saw it was just his mother checking in on him. A smile crept onto her face as she thought about the day she would be Ayano Yagi. After one last glance at the sleeping Izuku, she jumped from roof to roof, making her way home. As the sun rose, Izuku woke up and stretched before heading to brush his teeth and take a shower. Once he was ready, he made his way downstairs to find his family in the kitchen. Inko greeted him cheerfully, and Toshinori, his father, added his morning wishes. Just then, Izuku was tackled to the ground by his younger sister, Izumi, who hugged him tightly. After a playful exchange, Inko reminded Izumi to let her brother eat. Izuku, still a bit tired, mentioned how he had been feeling fatigued lately, prompting his family to wonder if someone was thinking about him. Meanwhile, Ayano sneezed unexpectedly, catching the attention of her mother, Ryoba, who teased her about the boy she often followed. Ayano brushed it off, but a smile lingered on her face. Back with the Yagis, Izumi and Izuku finished breakfast and prepared to leave for school. As they stepped outside, Izumi asked if he was ready for the last few days before summer break. They were both excited, and just then, Ayano rushed over, hugging Izuku and making him blush slightly. She greeted them both warmly, and they decided to walk to school together. As they walked, Izumi and Ayano exchanged playful glares, each protective of Izuku in their own way. The atmosphere was light, with a hint of rivalry, but they continued on their way to school. Upon arriving at the school gates, Ayano hugged Izuku one last time before heading inside, while Izumi smiled, hiding her true feelings. Once inside, the school bell rang, signaling everyone to head to class. Izuku and Izumi hurried to their classroom, where they took their seats among friends like Shoto, Katsuki, and the trio of Makoto, Issei, and Tatsumi. As the teacher entered, the class settled down, ready to begin the lesson. Throughout the class, Izuku focused intently, taking notes while Izumi occasionally glanced at him, admiring her brother's innocence. Meanwhile, Shoka and Katsumi exchanged glances, captivated by Izuku's charm. The classroom buzzed with a mix of boredom and anticipation, each student lost in their own thoughts as they awaited the end of the day. Tatsumi felt restless in class, wishing to go home. The teacher lectured for 30 minutes until the lunch bell rang, prompting the students to rush out of the classroom. In the lunchroom, the Izuku squad gathered around a table, chatting animatedly. Issei asked if anyone had plans after school, but the group replied no. He suggested hitting the arcade, and Tatsumi and Makoto eagerly agreed, with Makoto mentioning she needed to inform her parents. Bakugo questioned why she always had to do that, to which Makoto explained that her sister would come looking for her otherwise. Shoto teased that her sister didn't seem scary, but Makoto insisted she was. The boys shivered at the thought of her speed and strength. Shoka shifted the topic, reminding everyone that there were only 3 weeks left of school and asking who was going to you. The group confirmed they all were. Izumi then expressed her concern about Makoto's quirk, stating that truth bullets might not be effective against villains. Katsumi agreed, while Tatsumi defended Makoto, suggesting there might be hidden abilities in her quirk. Issei added that they were all still training and that Izuku had the most challenges with his quirks. Ayano suddenly shouted for someone to go away, drawing the squad's attention to a familiar troublemaker. Katsumi recognized Mason and expressed her frustration. Shoka noted that he never knew when to quit, and Izumi agreed. Mason approached Ayano, trying to charm her, but she firmly rejected him. He persisted, offering to get her anything she wanted, but she countered that she wanted him to leave her alone. As Mason got too close for comfort, Ayano pushed him back, asserting her boundaries. Izuku, sensing the tension, rallied the boys to support Ayano. They approached Mason, who dismissed them with a scoff. Issei warned Mason to back off, while Bakugo contemplated taking action. Izuku calmly asked Mason to leave Ayano alone, but Mason threatened him, confident in his ability to avoid consequences. Mason pushed Izuku slightly, but Izuku stood his ground, confronting Mason. Mason spat on Izuku's shoe, shocking him and infuriating the girls. Ayano, Izumi, Shoka, and Katsumi all had their own thoughts about how to deal with Mason's behavior. Izuku, feeling disgusted, asked for a paper towel, which a random student provided. As Izuku cleaned his shoe, Mason returned to his table, where his friends laughed at his antics. Momo, Mason's sister, confronted him about his actions, warning him that his tactics would eventually backfire. Mason shrugged off her concerns, confident that nothing would happen to him. When the lunch bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, students filed back to class. After a few hours, the school day ended, and students rushed out to head home or to their next destination. The Izuku squad walked down the street toward the arcade. Issei excitedly announced their plans, and Izumi reminded everyone to notify their parents to avoid any worries. As they continued, Ayano ran up to them, hugging Izuku, which sparked jealousy among the girls. Ayano playfully asked if he missed her, and although he stammered, she found his reaction sweet. Shoka intervened, pulling Ayano aside to whisper a warning about Izuku. Ayano, undeterred, whispered back that she wasn't going anywhere. After their brief exchange, Shoka rejoined the group, and they all headed to the arcade, unaware that Mason was watching from a distance, feeling frustrated that Ayano preferred spending time with the Izuku squad over him. Momo sensed Mason's brewing plans, worried about what he might do next. In the car, as the driver started to pull away, he asked if either Mason or Momo needed to go somewhere before heading home. Mason quickly replied that he wanted to go to the arcade, and Momo agreed. Mason, eager to get going, pulled out his phone to make a call while tapping his foot on the floorboard. The driver acknowledged Mason's request and headed toward the arcade. Mason was anxiously waiting for someone to pick up on the other end of the line. After a moment, a voice answered, and Mason instructed them to meet him at the arcade, promising to explain everything once they arrived. He hung up, feeling frustrated. Momo observed Mason's impatience and thought about how he had no real friends, just accomplices. Meanwhile, the Izuku squad was walking down the street toward the arcade. Izuku suddenly felt an odd sensation, prompting the girls to notice his goosebumps. Katsumi asked if he was all right, but Izuku brushed it off, saying it was nothing. Shoka encouraged him to share if something was bothering him, and Izumi echoed her sentiment. Izuku hesitated, finally admitting that it felt like someone was watching them, particularly him. The girls exchanged puzzled glances, while Issei reassured Izuku that it was nothing to worry about, as he often experienced the same feeling. Just then, a mysterious figure appeared out of nowhere, startling everyone, especially Izumi and Ayano. The figure apologized for the scare and introduced herself as 𝐶𝐿. She had a dark demeanor and a past that involved running away from home, which led to her meeting Izuku one night when he offered her a place to stay. After a heartfelt conversation, Lucy had reconsidered her decision to run away, and from that day on, she had developed feelings for Izuku, keeping a watchful eye on him from the shadows. Katsumi questioned why they should share their plans with Lucy, who seemed to have an unsettling presence. Izuku reassured them, saying that he and Izumi knew her. Lucy remarked that Izuku had too many friends, which elicited a laugh from him. Ayano was taken aback, realizing that Lucy had been inside Izuku's room, and her jealousy flared. Issei teased Izuku about having a girlfriend, causing the boys to laugh at his flustered reaction. The girls, feeling threatened by Lucy's presence, exchanged glares. Lucy smirked, sensing their jealousy. As tensions rose, the boys decided to leave the girls behind, urging them to get along. Izumi suggested they calm down and enjoy their time together, but Ayano was adamant about her dislike for Lucy. Katsumi joined in, expressing her frustration over Ayano's behavior toward Izuku. The girls were at an impasse, but Izumi insisted they focus on finding the boys first. Suddenly, a random kid flew through the back door of the arcade, catching the attention of the group. Shoko wondered what was happening, while Katsumi dismissed it as someone else's problem. But when they realized it was Drago, a notorious Yakuza enforcer, and that Izuku was involved in a fight, the girls rushed forward to see what was going on. The boys were engaged in a fierce battle against a group of delinquents, with Izuku facing off against Drago. Bakugo unleashed his explosive power, sending two delinquents crashing into a fence, while Shoto and Issei teamed up to create a shockwave that sent their opponents flying. Meanwhile, Tatsumi and Makoto were also in the fray, with Tatsumi easily overpowering his foes. Makoto, however, found himself in a tough spot, trying to reason with a delinquent who was intent on violence. Just as the situation escalated, an unseen force struck the delinquent, sending him flying and surprising his companions. As the chaos unfolded, Tatsumi approached Makoto and pulled him into a supportive embrace, declaring that no one would ever doubt his heroism again. The battle raged on, with the squad fighting valiantly against the odds, determined to protect each other and emerge victorious. Makoto expressed his gratitude to Tatsumi, who replied that it was no problem. Suddenly, the boys turned to see Izuku sent flying into a pile of trash cans, which toppled over, revealing some bruises on him. Drago smirked, mentioning that Mason had said Izuku would be tough, but it seemed he was mistaken. The girls reacted with surprise at the mention of Mason. Bakugo shouted in anger, realizing that Mason had sent Drago after them. Drago confirmed that Mason had instructed him to teach the boys some manners, mentioning something about taking what was his, but he didn't care about the details. He was just there to fight. Drago warned Izuku that if he stayed down and apologized, he would leave him with his bones intact, suggesting it was a fair deal. In response, Izuku charged at Drago and landed a punch to his face, surprising the crowd and bringing joy to his friends. Ayano and Izumi noted that this was Izuku's third quirk, showcasing his brutish nature. Drago, furious, began to retaliate but was caught off guard by Izuku's speed. As Izuku swept Drago's legs, Drago managed to catch himself and attempted to kick back, but Izuku blocked the attacks, grabbing Drago's foot and throwing him aside. Drago landed on his feet but was met with a knee to the face, breaking his nose. Drago, enraged, leaped into the air, igniting his feet as he descended towards Izuku, declaring that it was over for him. The girls shouted for Izuku to dodge, urging him to move out of the way. Izuku, however, prepared himself and suddenly vanished, leaving Drago bewildered. Before Drago could comprehend what was happening, he felt a sharp pain in his back, causing him to cough. As he fell unconscious, he turned to see Izuku behind him, his claws stained with blood. Drago hit the ground, leaving the crowd in shock as Izuku landed, retracting his claws and taking deep breaths to calm himself. The area fell silent until Ayano approached Izuku, placing a hand on his shoulder and asking if he was all right. Izuku hugged her, reassuring her that he was fine. The crowd erupted in cheers for Izuku, and Ayano hugged him tightly. Soon, Izumi, Shoka, and Katsumi tackled the two to the ground, expressing their relief that he was okay. Izuku, slightly overwhelmed, asked them to get off him. The girls complied, and as Izuku stood up, he noticed the crowd cheering for him. He thanked everyone, feeling a sense of pride. Amid the cheers, a random girl shouted a question about Izuku's relationship status, catching him off guard. The boys laughed at his flustered reaction, while the girls turned to see the girl who had spoken, a classmate with pink hair and golden earrings, giggling as she ran off. Ayano claimed her as her own. Bakugo, annoyed, ordered the crowd to clear out, while Shoto insisted that Izuku needed space. Katsumi added that anyone who didn't move would be dealt with in a more entertaining way, demonstrating her point by tossing a random guy into an arcade machine, prompting everyone to quickly disperse. Makoto remarked on the day's events, and Tatsumi agreed, acknowledging the chaos. Bakugo expressed his frustration with Mason, while Izumi suggested they needed to take action. Shoto pointed out that calling the police would be futile, but Izuku insisted they should at least try. Shoka reminded them that it was unlikely anyone would believe them over a wealthy spoiled brat like Mason, leaving Izuku pondering their next steps. Katsumi encouraged Izuku to stay positive, assuring him they would find a way to confront their adversary. Issei added that when they did, it would be a moment to cherish. Makoto chimed in, expressing excitement at the thought of witnessing their enemy's despair, though he quickly clarified that it was just something he heard from an online friend. Izuku then inquired about Ayano's whereabouts, and Shoto mentioned she had something to take care of. Izumi suggested they head home, and Izuku agreed. Meanwhile, Ayano was making her way home, skipping down the street. A random girl nearby thought about how cute Izuku was and wondered if she could help him overcome his shyness with girls. Suddenly, Ayano's demeanor shifted as she was confronted by a dark presence. In another part of the city, Drago was being taken back to his warehouse, fuming over a recent encounter that had tarnished his reputation. His gang members suggested they let his brother handle the situation, and Drago reluctantly agreed. Just then, Lucy appeared unexpectedly, asking about the green-haired boy they were discussing. Drago revealed Izuku's name and boasted about how his brother would deal with him. Lucy, unfazed, summoned a scythe from the ground, causing Drago and his gang to step back in fear. She warned them that they wouldn't see the light of day again. In a flash, she moved behind Drago, and he was horrified to find his gang members incapacitated. As he fell to his knees, Lucy placed the scythe at his throat, and he begged for mercy, promising not to harm Izuku. Lucy decided to let him go, but as he attempted to flee, he realized he had lost the use of his legs. In a swift motion, Lucy ended his life, expressing her anger over his previous actions towards Izuku. She declared that she would protect him at all costs, even if it meant facing the entire Yakuza. Meanwhile, Ayano, covered in BLD, confronted Lucy, claiming Izuku as her husband. Lucy insisted he was her prince, and the two girls prepared for a confrontation. They charged at each other, weapons drawn, intent on eliminating the other. As they clashed, Ayano ducked and attempted to strike, but Lucy evaded and countered with a kick that sent Ayano against the wall. Ayano seized the opportunity to gain the upper hand, but Lucy quickly summoned a powerful force, calling upon an ancient power. As the ground trembled, Ayano braced herself for whatever might emerge, but when the shaking ceased, nothing happened, leaving Lucy bewildered. The tension between the two girls escalated, each determined to claim victory and protect their connection to Izuku. Something wasn't right, and Ayano decided to try again. She hurled a hatchet at Lucy, who narrowly dodged it just in time. As she turned to see Ayano rushing at her with another hatchet, Ayano declared her intent to split Lucy in two. Lucy, unfazed, dodged and weaved through Ayano's relentless attacks. She attempted to retrieve her scythe from the roof but found herself stuck. With a sigh, Lucy expressed her frustration, while Ayano shouted for her to die. In a sudden turn of events, Lucy was knocked off the roof, plummeting toward the ground. Ayano eagerly anticipated the sound of a splat, but after a few moments of silence, she grew impatient. She leaned over the edge, searching for any sign of Lucy, but found nothing. No BLD, no body. Anger surged within her, prompting Ayano to leap down into the alleyway below, where she was met with confusion at Lucy's absence. As she stepped out of the alley, Ayano wondered what had happened. To her shock, Lucy appeared, completely unharmed. Lucy revealed her identity as the Princess of Shadows, claiming that darkness was her only true friend. Ayano realized the gravity of the situation. With the moon now out, Lucy had a significant advantage. Lucy also explained that her spell had failed on the roof because they needed solid ground. Before Ayano could respond, She was struck hard, sending her crashing into a lamppost. As she coughed, she looked up to see a large, ominous figure looming over her. Lucy introduced the figure as her sister's ex-boyfriend, prompting Ayano to comment on his unattractiveness. Lucy snapped her fingers, commanding the dead man to charge at Ayano. As Ayano scrambled to her feet, she recalled advice from Izuku on how to fight someone larger than herself. Determined, Ayano faced the dead man, dodging its powerful swings. She attempted to stab it in the head, but it merely stared back at her, unfazed. Frustrated, Ayano realized her attack had failed. Lucy taunted her, urging her to give up, but Ayano refused to back down. The two engaged in a fierce battle, with Lucy's scythe clashing against Ayano's knife. They exchanged glances filled with determination, each refusing to yield. As the fight continued, Lucy summoned the dead man again. This time, Ayano leaped up and threw her knife into its exposed heart, causing it to burst. Lucy sighed, noting that she needed to be more careful in the future. Ayano declared that it was time to end the fight, while Lucy mentioned her plans for Ayano's future. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens echoed in the distance, prompting both girls to glance at each other. They agreed to call it a draw and hurriedly left the scene before the authorities arrived. Ayano dashed across the rooftops, making her way home, while Lucy vanished into the shadows. Upon sneaking through the kitchen window, Ayano tiptoed toward her room, only to find her mother waiting for her in the living room. Ryoba greeted her with a smile and inquired about her whereabouts. Ayano claimed she had been at a friend's house, but her mother pointed out that she didn't have any friends. With a sigh, Ayano admitted to fighting some competition. Ryoba mentioned that the green-haired boy Ayano liked had other girls interested in him, to which Ayano responded that they were tougher than the girls at Academy High School. Ryoba reassured her that she would prevail, as she always did. After thanking her mother, Ayano rushed upstairs, eager to escape the conversation. She burst into her room, only to find her sister on her bed, distracted by a photo of Izuku. Ayano was taken aback and demanded to know what her sister was doing. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, startled, asked her to come back later, but Ayano was having none of it. In a fit of frustration, Ayano threw a knife that narrowly missed 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨, embedding itself in the wall. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 glared back, and Ayano shot her a challenging look. She insisted that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 leave her room, but her sister pleaded for just a few more minutes. Ayano, growing impatient, threw another knife, which 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 caught, irritation evident on her face. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 then asked if she could at least keep the picture, but Ayano was having none of it. She hurled 3 knives at 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨, who rolled out of the way just in time. 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 quickly grabbed a crossbow and shot at Ayano, who ducked as the arrow lodged into the wall, drawing their mother's attention. Ryoba called out to them, reminding them to be mindful of their noise. Both girls quickly replied in unison, assuring their mother they would be careful. With that, 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 dropped the crossbow and tackled Ayano to the ground, brandishing a kitchen knife. Ayano retaliated, kicking 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 away and attempting to stab her, but 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 blocked the attack. 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 argued that all she wanted was one picture, pointing out that Ayano had plenty already. The tension in the room escalated, but the sisters remained locked in their playful rivalry. Ayano had a singular focus. Every picture of her beloved Izuku was priceless. 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨, however, warned that if she attempted to take a picture of Izuku, Ayano would retaliate fiercely. True to her word, Ayano seized 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 and threw her down the stairs. As 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 tumbled down and hit the floor, she looked up to see Ayano poised in the air, ready to strike with a knife. 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 quickly rolled out of the way just in time. Getting back to her feet, 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 narrowly avoided a slash from Ayano, who lunged at her again. In a swift move, 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 rolled over the dinner table, grabbed a fork, and stabbed Ayano's hand. Ayano winced in pain, exclaiming in frustration, only to be chastised by their mother, Ryoba, for her language. Ayano quickly apologized, and Ryoba praised her for it. 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 attempted to stab Ayano in the eye, but Ayano deftly parried the fork, sending it into the ceiling. In retaliation, 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 executed a spin kick that knocked the kitchen knife from Ayano's grasp, followed by a punch that sent Ayano sprawling. 𝐀𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨 then climbed on top of Ayano, determined to assert her demps. She declared that with Ayano out of the way, she could finally start a family with Izuku, who would cherish and love her. Enraged, Ayano retaliated with a punch to Kaguya's throat, forcing her to release her grip. Ayano then hurled Kaguya into the living room, where their mother was. As Ayano lunged at Kaguya again, Kaguya dodged and grabbed a stoker from near the fireplace, heating it up. She threatened to carve a word into Ayano's back, but Ayano challenged her. Kaguya rushed at Ayano, moving the stoker, but Ayano dodged and countered with an elbow to Kaguya's face. Seizing the opportunity, Ayano attempted to stab Kaguya with the stoker, but Kaguya rolled away and swept Ayano's legs, causing her to fall. The two engaged in a fierce exchange of punches until their mother clapped her hands, announcing it was time for bed. Both girls reluctantly agreed and headed upstairs to their rooms, planning for the next day. As dawn broke, Ayano woke early and climbed out her window onto the roof, determined to reach Izuku's house. Meanwhile, Kaguya emerged from her own window, bow and arrow in hand, intent on stopping Ayano. She shot an arrow at Ayano, who caught it just inches from her head, smirking back at Kaguya. Undeterred, Kaguya prepared another arrow, aiming carefully before firing again. Ayano, surprised, realized Kaguya had more arrows and swiftly dodged or sliced through each one. Kaguya, growing frustrated, ignited the tips of 3 arrows and shot them at Ayano. Although Ayano dodged the flaming projectiles, they struck nearby rooftops, igniting them. Kaguya chased after Ayano, continuing to shoot arrows, but Ayano skillfully evaded or cut them down. Eventually, Ayano reached Izuku's rooftop, feeling triumphant only to be tackled by Kaguya, who aimed her bow at Ayano's face, declaring that the chase was over. Before Kaguya could fire, they both heard a door open. Peeking through Izuku's window, they saw his mother, Inko, enter his room. The two girls sighed in relief, but their rivalry was far from over. Kaguya vowed that this was not the end, and Ayano promised she would be ready for whatever Kaguya had planned. As the sun rose higher, Izuku woke up and began his morning routine, heading to school alongside his sister, Izumi, and Ayano. Unbeknownst to them, Ayano's gaze was fixed on Kaguya, who was lurking at the end of the hallway, armed with a crossbow. Kaguya waited patiently for the moment when Izuku and Izumi would separate, ready to take her shot. When the opportunity arose, Kaguya fired, but Ayano dodged effortlessly. Frustrated, Kaguya reloaded her crossbow, only to find Ayano had vanished. Disappointed, Kaguya stowed her weapon in her gym bag and slipped into a secret passage leading to the school's basement. There, she turned on the lights to reveal a chalkboard covered in pictures of other girls, including Ayano. Kaguya's determination intensified as she vowed that she would not let anyone take Izuku from her. In a fit of anger, she threw a dart at Ayano's picture, hitting it squarely. With a smirk, she hid the chalkboard in the shadows and made her way to the student council, plotting her next move. Kaguya contemplated her situation, realizing there were only 4 competitors for Izuku's affection. If she played her cards right, it could come down to just the 2 of them, and they could start a family together. Lost in her thoughts, she giggled to herself, feeling flustered, but her distraction led her to bump into someone, causing them both to tumble to the floor. Mikan, who had been caught off guard, quickly apologized, stuttering as she spoke. Kaguya recognized her immediately and reassured her. Mikan, relieved, got to her feet and explained she was on her way to her office. Kaguya waved her off, telling her to go ahead. As Mikan hurried past, Kaguya reflected on her clumsiness and lack of confidence, feeling assured that Mikan was no match for her in the competition for Izuku's heart. Meanwhile, Mikan worried about Izuku, wishing she had more self-confidence. She had seen him earlier but hadn't realized he had been in a fight. Their thoughts were interrupted by a group of students discussing a recent event. One student shared that Izuku and his friends had gotten into a confrontation with 𝗧𝗪 and his gang. The news quickly escalated, revealing that 𝗧𝗪 and his crew had died the previous night, with a chilling message left behind. Kaguya's heart raced at the thought of Izuku being involved in such danger, and she felt a surge of anger towards Ayano for not informing her. The school bell rang, signaling the start of the first PRD, and Kaguya rushed to her office, feeling anxious. Once inside, she vented her frustration at Ayano for not telling her about Izuku's fight. Opening her laptop, she searched for news on the incident, only to find it was just another murder case. She felt helpless, realizing she needed to know more to protect Izuku. Just then, her best friend Chika entered the office, greeting her cheerfully. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 responded positively, but her mood shifted when Chika mentioned Drago's death, confirming the rumors. Chika explained that it was believed to be the work of a rival gang. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 agreed, feeling the weight of the situation. As they settled into their work, the scene shifted to Mikon, who was pacing nervously. She hoped Izuku was okay, regretting not knowing about the fight. She wished she could confront Drago herself if he were still alive. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and she opened it to find her teacher, Shoko. Mikon greeted her nervously, and Shoko asked if anyone had come in. Mikon replied no, and Shoko casually mentioned smoking, despite Mikon's concerns about the smoke detector. Mikon found Shoko's perspective on life both depressing and enlightening. The day passed uneventfully for everyone. Classes went on as usual for Izuku and his friends, while 𝐾𝐲𝐬 dealt with student requests, mostly declining them, and Mikon tended to any injured students in the nurse's office. When the lunch bell rang, 𝐾𝐲𝐬 and Chika sat down to eat together. Chika suddenly asked if there was someone 𝐾𝐲𝐬 liked, catching her off guard. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 hesitated, unsure of how to respond without revealing her feelings for Izuku. She ultimately claimed there was no one, but Chika pressed further, revealing her own crush on Izuku. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 was taken aback, feeling a surge of protectiveness over her feelings for him. Before 𝐾𝐲𝐬 could respond, Ayano burst into the office with a smile, but 𝐾𝐲𝐬 felt uneasy. She reached for her army knife, ready for whatever might come next. Ayano greeted them, and Chika was surprised to learn 𝐾𝐲𝐬 had a sister. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 introduced them, feeling a mix of annoyance and concern about Ayano's intentions. As Chika left the room, 𝐾𝐲𝐬 braced herself for the conversation with her sister, knowing it would be anything but ordinary. The moment she did, Ayano turned toward the door and pulled out a silent pistol, intending to shoot Chika through it. However, before she could pull the trigger, 𝐾𝐲𝐬 threw her army knife at Ayano, who quickly turned and caught it. Ayano glared at 𝐾𝐲𝐬, who jumped out from behind her desk, brandishing a machete and rushing toward Ayano. Ayano fired at her, but 𝐾𝐲𝐬 skillfully sliced the bullets in half, surprising Ayano. Dropping the gun, Ayano pulled out a cleaver and charged at 𝐾𝐲𝐬. As the two closed the distance, they swung their weapons, and the clash created a shockwave in the room. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 insisted that Ayano let her handle Chika, urging her to stay out of it. Ayano retorted that she couldn't trust 𝐾𝐲𝐬 to defeat Chika, pointing out that she was her best friend and questioning her ability to go through with it. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 tried to defend herself, but Ayano reminded her of a past failure at Academy High School, where 𝐾𝐲𝐬 had messed up a critical task, nearly getting them both arrested. The two stepped back and charged at each other once more, the sound of steel clashing echoing throughout the room. Meanwhile, outside, Chika was lost in her music, unaware of the battle unfolding just beyond the door. Chika was outside the room, enjoying her music, while Ayano and 𝐾𝐲𝐬 were inside, surveying the chaos. The room was a disaster, with signs of a struggle evident in the bullet holes, ruined furniture, and scratched walls, yet both sisters appeared unscathed. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 expressed her frustration about the mess, and Ayano reluctantly agreed to help clean, but not without a serious ultimatum regarding Chika. Ayano insisted that 𝐾𝐲𝐬 had until the end of the week to deal with Chika, or she would take matters into her own hands. 𝐾𝐲𝐬 agreed and they set to work tidying up the room. Once they finished, they exchanged glares before parting ways. Ayano stepped out to find Chika dancing, which made her giggle and catch Chika's attention. After a brief exchange, Chika returned to 𝐾𝐲𝐬, who was seated and ready to resume their tasks. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and they both prepared to get back to work. Meanwhile, in the nurse's office, Mikon was visibly exhausted. She questioned the influx of injured students, and Shoko casually remarked that boys often played rough. Mikon sighed, hoping that was the last of the day's cases, but a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, her bored expression shifted to shock upon seeing Makoto, who was battered and bruised. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly ushered him to a nurse's bed to assess his injuries. Makoto explained that he had been caught off guard in the bathroom, confirming he had been jumped. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pressed for names, determined to report the incident, but Makoto hesitated. After some coaxing, he revealed the names of his attackers: Tanaka Hajime, Oga Masaru, and Takeshi Himemiya. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 vowed to inform the principal after school, while Shoko advised Makoto to stay still and not move too much. As 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stepped out to use the bathroom, she pulled out her phone and called 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, urgently reporting the situation. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 demanded names, and upon receiving them, instructed 𝐀𝐿 not to take action until she gave the signal. After hanging up, 𝐀𝐮𝐿 contacted Toko, who quickly prepared for action, transforming into her alter ego, 𝗀𝐻𝐿. Sayo excitedly gathered her weapons, ready for a confrontation. Back at the high school, Izuku and his friends were worried about Makoto, who had not returned to class. As the bell rang, they rushed to the nurse's office, where they found Makoto bandaged and recovering. The group was shocked, and questions flew about what had happened. Makoto shared the names of his attackers, prompting Bakugo and the others to plan a confrontation. However, Makoto warned them that the attackers were part of Mason's group, leading to frustration among his friends. Izuku, feeling anger rise within him, stormed out of the nurse's office, prompting concern from Izumi. Makoto noted how fiercely loyal Izuku was to his friends, and the group rallied around him, ready to support their friend in whatever came next. "How long do you think you'll be here?" Makoto estimated a few more minutes. Issei decided to stay right there, and Tatsumi agreed. Makoto expressed his gratitude to them. Shoto suggested they head out, and Shoko wished Makoto well. Makoto clarified that he wasn't sick, just hurt. As Shoka, Shoto, Katsumi, and Bakugo left, the scene shifted to Izuku, who was outside sitting on the school stairs, feeling frustrated. A hand on his shoulder made him look up to see Izumi. Izumi acknowledged that she understood his anger, as she felt upset too. Izuku lamented that they had no idea this would happen and could have done something to prevent it. Izumi reassured him that they had no clue, and it wasn't their fault. She encouraged him to not let Mason's actions deter him from pursuing his goals. Izuku thanked her, appreciating her support. Izumi hugged him, and he smiled, returning the embrace, unaware that Ayano was lurking nearby with a silent pistol in hand. Ayano sighed, contemplating her next move, before putting the pistol away and approaching Izuku and Izumi, much to Izumi's dismay. Inside the school, Tanaka Hajime sat alone in his counseling office, holding a soda bottle in one hand and a picture of Kaguya in the other. He mused about Kaguya's blank expression, believing that beneath her mask lay a passionate side waiting to be revealed. He opened a desk drawer, revealing photos of girls he had been with throughout the school year. Tanaka was determined that soon Kaguya would be his, and he would have a harem of attractive ladies. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 entered, and Tanaka smirked at her presence. 𝐀𝐮 stammered that she had brought him tea, knowing how hard he had been working. Tanaka welcomed her, feeling quite thirsty. 𝐀𝐮 handed him the tea, watching him drink it with a smile. She asked how it was, and he complimented her on her tea-making skills, unaware of the trouble brewing in his stomach. Suddenly, Tanaka felt a sharp pain in his stomach, realizing he needed to rush to the bathroom. He dashed past 𝐀𝐮, who couldn't help but smirk at his predicament. As Tanaka reached the boys' bathroom, he hurried into a stall, only to find that his stomach pain had vanished unexpectedly. Confused, he was taken by surprise when he suddenly felt nauseous and threw up. In a frantic attempt to regain control, he slipped and fell, landing face-first in the toilet. Despite his efforts to escape, he found himself trapped, struggling as the situation escalated. 𝐀𝐮 entered the bathroom moments later, discovering the chaotic scene. She pulled out her phone and called 𝐀𝐮, who answered immediately. 𝐀𝐮 informed her that the deed was done, and 𝐀𝐮 acknowledged it, ready to move on to the next target. Meanwhile, 𝐀𝐮 was perched on a rooftop with a sniper rifle, waiting for Takeshi Himemiya to return home. As Takeshi walked with a smile, boasting about his day, 𝐀𝐮 felt disgusted by his words and decided to take action. She replaced the regular sniper rounds in her rifle with something more effective. As Takashi reached his house and knocked on the door, his sister Mako opened it, looking annoyed. She expressed her frustration at his presence, insisting he should move out. Takashi, unfazed, tried to charm her, but Mako firmly declared that their relationship had to end. Just as tensions rose, a sudden loud bang interrupted their confrontation, leaving Mako horrified as she realized what had happened. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, satisfied with her work, called 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to inform her that the deed was done. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, already ahead of the game, had captured 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐽 and was in the process of torturing him, turning him into a human pincushion. With a canister of fuel in hand, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 prepared to finish her work, ensuring that 𝐻𝐻 would not escape his fate. 𝐻𝐻 noticed an unusual smell and struggled to identify it. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, with a mischievous grin, approached him, revealing a lighter and laughing maniacally. She declared that 𝐻𝐻 would soon understand the situation. Without warning, she tossed the lighter, igniting the gas around 𝐻𝐻. Flames engulfed him, and he cried out in agony as 𝐒𝐮𝐬 continued to laugh, reveling in the chaos. With a sigh, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 expressed her enjoyment of such moments and decided it was time to leave. She exited through the back door, deliberately knocking over a barrel of oil. The barrels toppled in a chain reaction, spilling oil across the floor and toward the burning 𝐻𝐻. The flames rapidly spread, reaching the barrels, and then, an explosion rocked the warehouse, sending flames and debris into the air. The nearby crowd panicked and fled, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬 stood in an alleyway, sneezing before returning to Toko. Toko, startled by the commotion, quickly realized the warehouse was ablaze and hurried away from the scene, wondering what had transpired during her nap. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, in a teasing manner, acknowledged her involvement, prompting Toko to sigh in exasperation. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 reminded Toko to contact Dekimaru to inform her of the situation. Toko complied, pulling out her phone to call 𝐾𝐮𝐬, who answered promptly. After confirming the deed was done, 𝐾𝐮𝐬 advised her to lay low as the authorities were on the lookout. Toko felt reassured, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬 playfully remarked about her speed, teasing that no one could catch her. Toko pointed out that 𝐾𝐮𝐬 could see her regardless of her speed, to which 𝐒𝐮𝐬 proudly declared 𝐾𝐮𝐬 as the boss. It was a new day, but there was one significant difference. Aldera High was closed for the week and under investigation following the tragic deaths of 4 students. The news shocked many staff and students alike. In the boys' bathroom, detectives were examining the scene where Tanaka Hajime had been found. Detective 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽 surveyed the area, feeling disgusted by the circumstances. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽 asked a nearby officer about the situation. The officer informed him that Tanaka was part of the student council. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽 requested the names of the council members, and the officer complied before walking away. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽, frustrated by the lack of security footage, learned that the cameras had only recorded static. He knew they needed to find answers quickly before more tragedies occurred. As 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽 went to question the principal, the scene shifted to Ayano and 𝐾𝐮𝐽, who were watching the news about the deceased students. 𝐾𝐮𝐽 expressed her satisfaction that a certain student was no longer a nuisance, while Ayano teased her about someone else having taken action first. Ryoba, observing the two, reminded them of the lessons she had taught them, and they acknowledged her words. Ryoba noted that they had a week off from school, which excited Ayano and 𝐾𝐮𝐽, who were eager to see their friend Izuku. In a playful exchange, Ayano and 𝐾𝐮𝐽 began to spar, with Ayano throwing a punch that 𝐾𝐮𝐽 skillfully dodged before dashing out the front door, Ayano hot on her heels. Ryoba giggled at their antics, reminiscing about her own youth. Meanwhile, at Makoto's house, he was resting in bed while his sister 𝐾𝐮𝐬 took care of him. She insisted on feeding him, despite his protests. 𝐾𝐮𝐬 was determined to look after him, and Makoto reluctantly complied. As they shared a moment, 𝐾𝐮𝐬 inquired about how he had gotten hurt, but Makoto dismissed it, stating that those responsible were no longer a threat. 𝐾𝐮𝐬 promised to be there for him whenever he needed her. After she left, Makoto logged onto a game chat with his friends Junko, Makuro, and Tsumugi, who were eager to play together. 𝐾𝐮𝐬, overhearing their conversation, felt a surge of protectiveness over her brother and attempted to hack into their chat to separate them, but her efforts were thwarted. In another part of town, Issei was training with his friends in the forest. They were engaged in friendly sparring when 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 was caught off guard by a fireball from Valley. After a brief exchange about the recent events at school, they speculated whether a rogue devil or fallen angel was responsible for the chaos. 𝐬𝐮𝐴 mentioned that his ex, 𝗀𝗡r, had been silent lately, and they all agreed to focus on their training. Unbeknownst to them, Rias and her friends were watching 𝐬𝐮𝐴 train from a distance, each harboring their own feelings for him. They were determined to protect their bond with him, even if it meant confronting others. Back at Tatsumi's house, he was preparing a meal and reflecting on the troubling events surrounding the school. With the recent deaths weighing on his mind, he turned on the TV for distraction, only to be interrupted by a message from a friend. Tatsumi smiled as he put the phone to his ear. 𝐬𝐴 greeted him, and Tatsumi responded with a casual hello. They exchanged pleasantries about their respective lives, but Tatsumi's mood shifted as he mentioned the troubling news about 4 students from Aldera High being found dead. 𝐬𝐴 expressed her concern, but inwardly, she felt relieved that Tatsumi was safe. As their conversation continued, 𝐬𝐴 asked if Tatsumi was eating anything, and he mentioned a burrito. She then suggested stopping by to talk, but Tatsumi hesitated, unsure about sharing his address since his parents preferred not to have visitors when they weren't home. 𝐬𝐴, however, already knew where he lived, having been discreetly observing him from a nearby rooftop with high-tech binoculars. Suddenly, 𝐬𝐴's phone slipped from her grasp as she sensed danger. An attacker approached her from behind, and she swiftly blocked a katana aimed at her back. Tatsumi, hearing the commotion, asked if she was all right, but 𝐬𝐴 quickly excused herself, sensing the urgency of the situation. She ended the call and dashed into action, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, engaging in a fierce battle with her assailant. The attacker taunted her, revealing herself as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, 𝐬𝐴's sister. 𝐬𝐴 was furious, questioning how 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had survived after their last encounter. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 smirked, reminding 𝐬𝐴 of her previous attempt to eliminate her. The two clashed fiercely, their blades colliding in a flurry of movement. 𝐬𝐴 was determined to protect Tatsumi, while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 insisted that he belonged to her. As the fight escalated, 𝐬𝐴 managed to kick 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, sending her flying off the rooftop. Not one to back down, 𝐬𝐴 followed her sister, and they continued their battle mid-air. In a decisive move, 𝐬𝐴 grabbed 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and drop-kicked her down to the ground. The impact was jarring, and 𝐬𝐴 landed on her sister, who coughed up blood, clearly injured. 𝐬𝐴, feeling a mix of anger and satisfaction, walked away, leaving 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 behind as she began to lose consciousness. Meanwhile, 𝐬𝐴 reflected on her broken phone, annoyed that she would need to replace it. She felt a sense of relief, knowing that one rival was out of the way. The scene shifted to Ayano and 𝐾𝐲𝐫, who had just arrived at Izuku's house. They rang the doorbell and waited impatiently. Inko, Izuku's mother, answered the door and was surprised to learn that her son had friends. She informed them that Izuku was not home but suggested they could find him at a cafe down the street. The two sisters rushed towards the cafe, fueled by worry and determination. They arrived and peered through the window, spotting Izuku and Izumi seated at a table. Ayano declared her intention to go inside, and 𝐾𝐲𝐫 followed closely behind. Inside the cafe, they approached Izuku's table and a maid greeted them. Ayano pointed out who they were there to see, and the maid allowed them to sit. As they settled in, Ayano couldn't help but wonder about the maid's familiarity with Izuku. Izuku introduced the maid as 𝗀𝗡r, explaining that they had met at the park and become friends. 𝗀𝗡r brought over 2 milkshakes, surprising Izuku, who had only ordered one. She explained that they were complimentary, and Izuku thanked her, while Izumi expressed her disappointment at the unexpected turn of events. Ayano and 𝐾𝐲𝐫 exchanged glances, sensing that their visit to the cafe was just the beginning of a more complicated situation. A few minutes later, Izumi and the others were discussing their orders. Ayano expressed her longing for a chocolate cake and a triple-flavored milkshake, while 𝐾𝐲𝐫 opted for a peppermint milkshake. 𝗀𝗡r, taking their orders, walked into the kitchen of the cafe, thinking to herself about Izuku and how his charm made it challenging for her to spend time alone with him. She decided to add a little something extra to the girls' orders before returning with a tray of food. She presented the treats, saying they had a chocolate cake, a peppermint milkshake, and a candy cane milkshake. The girls thanked her, and Rainier encouraged them to enjoy their food before taking a seat near the counter to observe them. Izuku then brought up a troubling topic, asking if the girls had heard about the recent events at school. Ayano and 𝐾𝐲𝐽 reacted with shock, wondering who could harm a student. Izuku expressed his hope that the police or heroes would catch whoever was responsible. As the girls sipped their milkshakes, Rainier noted their reactions, feeling a sense of satisfaction. However, after a few moments, the three girls began to feel dizzy and unwell, prompting Izuku to express his concern. He asked if they were all right, but Ayano and 𝐾𝐲𝐽 insisted they were fine, while Izumi simply nodded. The girls wobbled toward the bathroom, and Rainier watched with approval, though she noticed Izuku's worried expression and approached him. Izuku voiced his confusion about the girls' sudden discomfort, and Rainier reassured him that it wasn't his fault for not knowing about any allergies. Izuku felt a bit better after her words, and Rainier asked if she could sit with him, explaining she was on break. He agreed, and they began chatting, enjoying each other's company. Meanwhile, the girls were in the bathroom stalls, feeling miserable and thinking that something had been done to their food. As they struggled, Izuku and Rainier continued their conversation until Rainier checked her watch and realized she needed to return to work. She suggested they meet at the fountain later, hinting she had something important to share with him. Izuku agreed, and Rainier headed back to the kitchen. After a few minutes, the girls emerged from the bathroom looking unwell, which alarmed Izuku. He immediately checked their foreheads and realized they were warm. Concerned, he decided to take them home, despite their protests. He picked Ayano up in a bridal carry, causing her to blush, and then lifted 𝐾𝐲𝐽 onto his shoulder while Izumi was placed on his back. As he walked out of the cafe, the girls were filled with excitement at being carried by him. Izuku made his way to Ayano and 𝐾𝐲𝐽's home first. When he knocked on the door, Ayano's mother, Ryoba, answered and inquired about the girl's condition. Izuku explained the situation, and Ryoba invited them inside, leading him to the girls' rooms upstairs. Ayano suddenly panicked, realizing her room was filled with photos of Izuku. She quickly requested to walk the rest of the way, and Izuku complied, letting her go. Once inside her room, Ayano sighed in relief, surrounded by the pictures she had taken throughout the school year. Meanwhile, Izuku gently placed 𝐾𝐲𝐽 on her bed in the dark room, respecting her request not to turn on the lights. After leaving, 𝐾𝐲𝐽 sighed, relieved that he hadn't seen her body pillow featuring Izuku's face. Finally, Izuku carried Izumi downstairs, where he bid farewell to Ryoba, who encouraged him to visit again. He agreed, feeling pleased with the day's events. Izumi looked at her brother, feeling a bit dizzy. Izuku reassured her that they were heading home. As he stepped out the front door, he closed it behind him, leaving Ryoba in the living room. She peeked through the curtains, watching Izuku walk away, while Izumi snuggled up to him. Ryoba thought to herself that it was a bit strange, but she decided to get some rest as well. She headed upstairs, and the scene shifted to Izuku, who had just dropped Izumi off at home, much to her disappointment. He then set off to meet Rainier. As he walked, Izuku realized it was already nighttime. He decided to text his mom to let her know he might be home late. She replied, telling him to be safe, and he assured her he would. Looking up, he noticed the fountain in the center of the plaza but didn't see Rainier yet. He sat on the well, waiting for her to arrive. After 20 minutes, he began to worry. When Rainier finally appeared, she startled him, causing him to fall backward into the fountain. She quickly pulled him out, apologizing for the scare. Izuku reassured her that it was fine and complimented her appearance. Rainier, feeling nervous, prepared to confess her feelings. She told him that ever since they met, her heart raced whenever he was near, and she admired his sweet smile. Just as she was about to express her feelings, Lucy interrupted, causing Izuku to jump in surprise. Rainier was annoyed by Lucy's presence and insisted she leave, but Lucy refused. The tension between the two girls grew as Izuku watched them argue, feeling exasperated. Suddenly, a cloaked figure approached them, putting Izuku on edge. He walked over to the stranger, asking if everything was all right. The figure responded coldly, and before Izuku could react, a gunshot rang out. The sound jolted Rainier and Lucy from their argument, and they turned to see Izuku struggling with an assassin who had aimed a weapon at him. Izuku managed to push the assassin's arm away, but he was injured in the process. Determined to protect the girls, Izuku kicked the assassin back and took a battle stance. The assassin retaliated with daggers, but Izuku dodged and countered with a strike. He urged Rainier and Lucy to run and get help, but they hesitated. Izuku reassured them he would be fine, and they finally took off, drawing the assassin's attention. As the assassin aimed at the fleeing girls, Izuku acted quickly, disarming the attacker. However, the assassin retaliated, injuring Izuku before slamming him to the ground. As Izuku struggled to stay conscious, the assassin taunted him, claiming their job was done. Just then, Rainier appeared, furious and protective. She confronted the assassin, her anger palpable. With a surge of power, she unleashed her wings and summoned a crimson spear, striking the assassin. The attacker fell to the ground in pain, but Rainier's focus shifted back to Izuku, who was trying to get up. She rushed to his side, hiding her wings and helping him up. Izuku, weak and fading, called her name before losing consciousness. Rainier promised to get him to a hospital quickly. She lifted him into her arms and took flight, leaving the assassin behind. Meanwhile, Lucy confronted the wounded assassin, ensuring he wouldn't escape. She dragged him into the shadows, leaving him to his fate as she crushed his phone, vowing revenge against those who had harmed Izuku. Back at the hospital, Rainier paced anxiously, waiting for news about Izuku. She was filled with regret, questioning how this had happened and vowing to protect him at all costs. Rainier felt a surge of frustration as she thought about how she could have stopped the attack on Izuku. She was determined to find out who was responsible and make them pay. When the doctor returned, Rainier quickly stepped in front of him, gripping his collar tightly. She pleaded with him to tell her that Izuku was okay. The doctor, taken aback, urged her to calm down, but Rainier's anxiety was overwhelming. In a moment of desperation, she grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground as she demanded to know if Izuku was alive. The doctor managed to assure her that Izuku was stable, which prompted Rainier to release him. He explained that while no vital organs were harmed, Izuku would need a cane for a while as he healed. Rainier felt a mix of relief and guilt, wishing she could have done more to protect him. She asked if she could see him, and the doctor confirmed that he was in room 305, though he was currently sleeping. Rainier rushed up the stairs to the third floor, quickly locating the room. As she opened the door quietly, she saw Izuku peacefully sleeping. A smile broke through her tears as she took a seat beside him, gently holding his hand. She spoke softly, expressing her sorrow for not being able to protect him and her fear that she had failed him. Tears streamed down her face as she silently vowed to stay by his side. Meanwhile, Lucy sat in her room, tears flowing silently down her cheeks. It had been years since she had cried like this. She resolved that whoever was behind the assassination attempt on Izuku would face consequences. With determination, she opened her clothes drawer and retrieved a makeshift weapon. As she rolled up her sleeve, she inflicted a small wound on herself, believing it was a form of punishment for her perceived failures. She thought about how each time Izuku was hurt, it would leave a mark on her flesh. Lucy climbed into bed, staring at the ceiling, still crying quietly. Eventually, she let her emotions out, sobbing softly until she drifted off to sleep. On a nearby rooftop, 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 sat cross-legged, a knife in hand, trying to gather her thoughts. She knew she had to do something for her friend's sake. Taking a deep breath, she approached a bedroom window, sneaking inside. As she entered, she spotted her best friend's pink hair and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. With tears streaming down her face, she lifted the knife, whispering an apology to her friend. In a moment of panic, 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 plunged the knife down, only to be met with confusion as she felt something round and tough instead of human skin. Turning on the lamp, she discovered that there was no one in the bed, only a basketball adorned with a pink wig. Shocked, she exclaimed in disbelief, realizing the mix-up. 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐽 heard the sound of a gun, and before she could react, she felt the cold metal touch the back of her head. She stood completely still, her heart racing. A voice commanded her to go downstairs, and she complied, feeling a firm grip on her shoulder guiding her into the damp living room of the house. Once inside, she was forcefully seated in a chair. As she tried to process her surroundings, another voice announced her arrival, and the lights flickered back on, revealing two familiar figures. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's eyes widened in shock as she recognized them. She stammered their names, disbelief evident in her expression. The first figure greeted her with a casual tone, acknowledging their previous encounters. It was an unusual way to reunite. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 felt the pressure of a gun at the back of her head, realizing that 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was the one holding it. Chica, her super-duper best friend, confronted her, demanding to know what she was doing in their house at such a late hour. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Before she could finish her thought, Chica interrupted, eager to show her something. Chica walked over to grab a double-barrel shotgun from the wall, loading it with a serious expression. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's eyes widened as she glanced between the weapon and Chica. Chica explained that while she often joked around, this was no time for games. She insisted on a truthful answer, warning that a lie would have serious consequences. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was taken aback, questioning what had happened to the sweet Chica she knew. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 urged 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to speak up, and after a moment of contemplation, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 confessed that she had been sent to eliminate them. Toyomi, curious, asked who had given her that order. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 revealed it was her sister, Ayano. Chica and Toyomi exchanged knowing looks, confirming their suspicions. Chica smiled and reassured 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 that she could lower the gun. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, confused, pressed for clarification. Chica explained that she had suspected Ayano was a yandere from the start. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was shocked, struggling to comprehend how Chica had figured it out. Chica elaborated that she had a keen sense for people, just as 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had feelings for Izuku. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was surprised to learn that Chica also had feelings for Izuku, and they discussed the competition they faced for his affection. Chica assured 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 that they could share Izuku, and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 felt relief wash over her. They embraced, grateful that their friendship remained intact. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 warned Chica to be cautious, as her sister would likely come after her. Chica confidently stated she would be ready. As 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 left, she felt a sense of relief that she didn't have to harm her best friend. The night passed, and as dawn approached, Ayano paced anxiously on the roof, panicking because she couldn't find Izuku. She had checked his room and found it empty, leading her to worry about his safety. Thoughts of the worst-case scenarios flooded her mind as she returned home, feeling increasingly frantic. Upon entering her room, she kicked the door open, calling for her mother. Ryoba, tired and confused, emerged from her room, asking why Ayano was awake at such an early hour. Ayano exclaimed that her future husband was missing, and Ryoba quickly rushed to comfort her as Ayano broke down in tears. Ryoba reassured her daughter that love would guide her to Izuku, despite Ayano's skepticism about the advice. After calming down, Ayano decided to get some rest, promising to search for Izuku once the sun rose. As the sun finally rose, the scene shifted to the hospital, where Izuku was slowly regaining consciousness. The bright light made him squint, and he winced in pain as he remembered the events of the previous night. He noticed Rainier sleeping beside him, and gently nudged her awake. Rainier stirred, initially groggy, but quickly became alert upon seeing Izuku awake. Overcome with emotion, she hugged him tightly, momentarily forgetting his injuries. Izuku winced but reassured her that he was okay. Rainier revealed that she had stayed by his side all night, and Izuku expressed his gratitude. She felt a surge of happiness at his thanks. When he inquired about how she managed to stay, a flashback revealed Rainier's determination to remain with him, even when the doctor insisted visiting hours were over. Her fierce loyalty and love for Izuku shone through as she refused to leave his side, setting the stage for their deepening bond. About the rules, Rainier was determined to stay, and the doctor was not going to change her mind. The doctor pleaded with her not to involve security, but Rainier was not in the mood for negotiations. In a swift motion, she grabbed the doctor and moved towards the window, her grip firm as she held him outside, dangling precariously. The doctor shouted in alarm, but Rainier silenced him, insisting that he was disturbing someone who needed rest. The doctor, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly agreed to her demands, promising not to tell anyone about their encounter. Satisfied, Rainier tossed him back into the room and magically repaired the broken window, her glare making it clear that she meant business. She warned him that if he spoke a word of this, he would regret it. The doctor stammered his assurance of silence, but 𝐻𝐼nere, wanting to seal the deal, conjured a crimson axe, causing him to crawl backward in fear. With a swift motion, she swung the axe, and the doctor yelped in shock, but he quickly fled the room, terrified. 𝐻𝐼nere, satisfied with her display of power, instructed him to clean up the mess upon his return. In the present, 𝐻𝐼nere reflected on her actions, considering them a convincing sob story. Izuku, who had been listening, acknowledged that it made sense for her to stay since they had allowed it. Just then, there was a knock at the door, and they turned to see the one-handed doctor accompanied by a nurse. The doctor informed Izuku of his injuries, explaining that he had 2 stab wounds, one in his abdomen and the other in his side, but fortunately, no vital organs had been harmed. He would need a cane for support due to the injury. Before Izuku could be discharged, the nurse would conduct a quick examination to ensure there were no new injuries. Izuku agreed, and the doctor left the room. The nurse approached, ready to check on Izuku, but 𝐻𝐼nere was reluctant to step back. After some coaxing from Izuku, she finally complied, allowing the nurse to proceed with the examination. The nurse checked Izuku thoroughly, and after a few moments, she confirmed that he had no new injuries and was otherwise healthy, aside from the stitched wounds. The nurse promised to return with a cane and advised Izuku to call someone for a ride, as driving was not recommended. After she left, Izuku took out his phone and dialed his mother's number, sighing at the thought of her reaction. 𝐻𝐼nere asked if something was wrong, and Izuku explained that his mother would likely panic upon hearing he was in the hospital. As he waited, the phone picked up, and his mother, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, expressed her relief mixed with worry. When she learned he had been stabbed, her concern escalated, and she declared she was on her way. 𝐻𝐼nere commented on how loud 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was, and Izuku admitted he tried to avoid trouble. He suggested that 𝐻𝐼nere stay and wait for his mother. Just then, the nurse returned with Izuku's cane, and he carefully stood up with her help. Together, they made their way to the hospital lobby to wait for 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. As they waited, the hospital doors burst open, and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 rushed in, her eyes filled with concern as she spotted Izuku. She ran to him, enveloping him in a tight embrace, which he found uncomfortable due to his injuries. When she noticed the stitches, her expression shifted to shock and worry, and she demanded to know who had hurt him. Izuku explained that he hadn't seen the attacker clearly. 𝐻𝐼nere, standing nearby, silently vowed to find the one responsible for Izuku's injuries. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 then turned to 𝐻𝐼nere, expressing her gratitude for helping her son. Suddenly, a nurse turned up the volume on the TV, drawing everyone's attention to a news report about a recent murder in the city. Izuku listened in shock as the report detailed a dismembered body found in a yard, and he gripped his cane tightly. 𝐻𝐼nere hugged him, calming his nerves, while 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 suggested it was time to leave. Izuku agreed, and when 𝐻𝐼nere offered to help, he declined, thanking her for staying by his side. As he and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 left the hospital, 𝐻𝐼nere's smile faded, and she contemplated her feelings for Izuku, wishing to be more than just friends. As she stepped outside, her demeanor shifted from disappointment to determination. She recalled the events of the previous day and began to giggle at the thought of what was to come. With her black wings unfurling, she took to the skies, heading toward the morgue to gather the necessary pieces for her plan. Mason was in a state of panic at the 𝐻𝐼nere mansion after Lucy ominously told him to count his days. He had been looking over his shoulder ever since. Thoughts raced through his mind as he paced, reflecting on the recent chaos. First, Drago was dead, then those 3 troublemakers, and now one of his assassins had been found in a terrible state. He took deep breaths, trying to calm himself. He reminded himself that he was Mason 𝐻𝐼nere, the soon-to-be king, and he shouldn't be afraid of mere threats. Suddenly, a knock on the door startled him, causing him to jump back in fright. He approached the door cautiously and called out, asking who it was. Momo responded, reminding him to open the door before she asserted her dems as his older sister. Mason, recognizing her voice, sighed in relief and opened the door fully. He expressed gratitude that it was just her, but Momo noticed his distant demeanor and asked if something was wrong. Mason brushed it off, claiming he just needed some time to himself. Momo raised an eyebrow, questioning his choice of words, but 𝐻𝐼𝐻 quickly urged her to leave, pushing her out and shutting the door with a thud. Momo chuckled to herself, thinking about how 𝐻𝐼𝐻 was just being himself, much like their father. Once alone, 𝐻𝐼𝐻 flopped onto his bed, staring at the ceiling, contemplating his next move. He considered reaching out to his father for help but decided against it, knowing this was his problem to solve. Just then, his phone rang, and he felt a surge of hope as he checked the caller ID. When he answered, a voice on the other end confronted him about a mistake he had made. 𝐻𝐼𝐻 was confused, realizing he had sent an assassin after someone who was off-limits. The voice revealed that the target was someone very important and, as a result, she was quitting. 𝐻𝐼𝐻 was taken aback, insisting that she couldn't do that he owned her. The voice, introducing herself as Rose Wilson, daughter of Deathstroke, dismissed him, stating that no one owned her. 𝐻𝐼𝐻 pleaded for her to reconsider, offering money and better weapons, but Rose simply told him to inform his father that she was done with the 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 family. After hanging up, 𝐻𝐼𝐻 felt a surge of frustration and anger. He threw his phone against the wall, gripping his hair in irritation, and screamed in fury, vowing that she would pay for this betrayal. Just then, his phone rang again, and it was Rose once more. She reminded him not to forget to check on his other assassin friends before hanging up again. Confused, 𝐻𝐼𝐻 received a video that left him in shock. As he watched, his heart sank. The footage showed Rose taking down every assassin in his contacts in a series of brutal yet non-graphic scenes. After the video ended, 𝐻𝐼𝐻 dropped his phone and curled up on the floor, realizing he was in deep trouble. Meanwhile, Rose was at a distance, polishing her blade while watching drone footage on her phone. She saw a specific car heading home and noted its movements. As the car parked and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 helped Izuku out, Rose's expression shifted from determination to sorrow upon seeing Izuku with a cane. She lamented that if she had been there, he wouldn't be in such a state. Rose recalled their first meeting when she was 6 years old, bullied for being quirkless until Izuku intervened. Instead of leaving her alone, he offered her comfort, and in that moment, something changed within her. As time passed, they became close friends, but her father's insistence on training led her to move away, becoming an assassin while never forgetting Izuku. Snapping back to the present, Rose noticed that the drone was glitching as it approached Izuku's window. She was taken aback, wondering what was happening. Rose frantically tried to fix the drone, but her phone screen suddenly went black, indicating she had lost connection. She felt a surge of panic, knowing she needed to retrieve the drone before it fell into the wrong hands. As she got up to change into casual clothes, she heard giggling behind her. Turning around, she saw a familiar face on her phone. Monica greeted her with a smirk, asking if Rose was going somewhere. Rose, feeling anger rise within her, demanded Monica leave her phone. Monica dismissed her concerns, revealing she had turned off the drone and was instead planning to take Izuku to the fair. Rose's frustration boiled over as she realized Monica was already near Izuku's neighborhood. Determined, she thought about how she needed to act quickly. After dressing, Rose leaped out of the window of her warehouse, scaling the wall and jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Meanwhile, a car pulled up and the real Monica stepped out, taking a deep breath as she approached the Yagi house. As Monica reached the front door, Ayano appeared on the sidewalk, eyeing her suspiciously. Monica introduced herself, but Ayano was not impressed and demanded to know who she was. Monica explained that Izuku was a friend of hers, which only raised Ayano's suspicions further. Just then, a throwing knife sped toward Monica, who caught it effortlessly, surprising Ayano. Tension filled the air as Ayano insisted Monica step away from the door. Monica, unfazed, conjured more throwing knives, ready for a confrontation. Before either could make a move, an arrow struck the ground between them, halting the standoff. Rose, bow in hand, declared that Monica would not take Izuku anywhere. The situation escalated as both Monica and Ayano prepared for a fight, but just then, the doorknob jiggled. Izuku appeared, leaning on a cane, and was taken aback to see all three girls. Monica rushed to hug him gently, careful of his injuries, while Rose followed suit, much to Monica's dismay. Ayano watched, her jealousy simmering beneath the surface, but when Izuku embraced her as well, She momentarily forgot her anger. Izuku winced in pain, prompting Ayano to apologize immediately. He reassured her that it was fine, though both Monica and Ayano were concerned about his injuries. Izuku explained that he had been stabbed the previous night but insisted he was okay, albeit a little shaken. Curious about why the girls were at his house, Izuku was met with Monica's eager suggestion to go to the carnival. Rose quickly chimed in with the same request, while Ayano expressed her intentions as well. However, Izuku regrettably informed them that he couldn't go anywhere, as his parents and Izumi had grounded him after the incident. Izumi then appeared, asserting her authority over the house while glaring at the girls. She explained that she was in charge while their parents were away and firmly stated that no one could enter. Izuku, caught in the middle, apologized to the girls, leaving them frustrated but aware that they would have to wait for another opportunity. Monica reassured her friends that she would see them later and hoped for Rose's recovery. Rose echoed the sentiment, encouraging Ayano to stay strong. Izumi, with a playful tone, called out to her brother, Izuku, as she walked back inside with him, closing the door behind them. The remaining girls exchanged glances filled with rivalry. Rose warned them to watch their backs, while Monica stated that she was keeping an eye on them. Ayano threatened them to stay out of her way if they knew what was best for them. The three girls parted ways, each plotting how to win Izuku's affection. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to an abandoned church deep in the forest, where a chilling scream echoed from a hidden dungeon. Inside, Rainier wore a sadistic smile as she toyed with the assassin from the previous night. She urged him to scream louder, relishing every moment of his torment. With each lash of her WHP, the assassin cried out in pain, and Rainier took delight in his suffering, enjoying the power she held over him. After hours of relentless torture, she demanded to know who had sent him. The assassin, trembling, revealed that Mason Yaoyorozu was behind the order to eliminate her companion. Rainier, frustrated by his lack of knowledge about Mason's motives, reacted harshly, chastising him for his tears and calling him a good mutt for following orders. She taunted him about the promised reward, and as she donned gloves, the atmosphere turned ominous. Rainier prepared for her final act of cruelty, threatening him with a slow demise. She began her methodical torture, ensuring he remained conscious through every agonizing cut. The assassin, overwhelmed by pain, could only plead for mercy. Rainier, satisfied with her work, smiled at his broken state and asked for any last words. His response was a desperate wish for death, which she granted with a swift motion. Afterward, she exited the dungeon, placing the assassin's head among her collection of trophies. Outside, she encountered 3 other fallen angels, instructing them to find Mason Yaoyorozu and bring him to her. She emphasized the need for killers throughout the city but warned them not to harm a boy with green hair, whom she claimed as her future husband. The fallen angels acknowledged her orders, and as tensions flared among them, Rainier intervened, reminding them to focus on their mission. With a flick of her wings, Rainier took to the sky, determined to protect Izuku and confront Mason. The next day, Izuku was peacefully sleeping on the couch, resting his head on Izumi's lap. She gently patted his head, cherishing the moment. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her tranquility. It was her mother, Inko, reminding her that school would resume the following day, despite the recent unsettling events. Izumi expressed concern about the ongoing investigations into the murders, but Inko reassured her that it would be an early release day. As Izumi continued to slide Izuku's hair, unbeknownst to her, Kagaya and Chika observed from a rooftop. Kagaya expressed her disdain for Izumi, labeling her as a brocon and plotting to separate her from Izuku. Chika proposed an alternative plan, and Kagaya listened intently, intrigued by the idea. The scene returned to Izumi, who was blissfully unaware of the looming threats, enjoying her time with her brother. Izumi looked down at her sleeping brother, feeling a warmth spread through her as she admired his peaceful face. Her heart fluttered as she leaned in closer, almost ready to kiss him, when a sudden knock at the door startled her. She leaned back with a groan, wondering who could be at the door. As she approached, she hesitated before asking who it was. Chika, on the other side, hesitated too, trying to come up with a believable excuse. She finally blurted out that they were selling Girl Scout cookies. Izumi, still unsure, decided to open the door, only to be met with a shocking blow that sent her to the floor. Chika and Kaguya exchanged glances, surprised by the turn of events. Chika commented on her impressive swing, while Kaguya pondered their next move. Chika instructed Kaguya to close and lock the door, which she did, and then they both looked at Izumi, who lay unconscious. Chika grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and Kaguya, with a sinister smile, prepared to take action. She thought about how removing Izumi would pave the way for her future with Izuku. Chika reminded her of their shared goal, and they both focused on their plan. Just then, Izuku stirred awake, stretching and feeling a sharp pain in his side. He wondered about the source of his discomfort and decided to make himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Meanwhile, Chika and Kaguya were hiding in the upstairs bathroom, whispering about their predicament. Chika urged Kaguya to put the knife back, but Kaguya panicked, still holding it. They both agreed they needed to wait for the right moment to escape. Izuku, unaware of the tension above, continued making his sandwich while Chika and Kaguya remained hidden. He heard a noise upstairs that startled him, prompting him to investigate. He found a fallen flower vase but no sign of anyone else in the house. As he returned downstairs, Kaguya, still hiding in the cabinet, felt cramped and anxious. Chika hoped they wouldn't be discovered, fearing their chances with Izuku would vanish. Eventually, Inko and Toshinori returned home, and Inko began preparing dinner. The hours passed, and after dinner, everyone went to bed. Once it was quiet, Kaguya and Chika emerged from their hiding spots, whispering to each other about their escape plan. They found a window, opened it, and climbed out, relieved to be free. Chika expressed how wild the experience had been, and Kaguya agreed, noting Izuku's nice house. They parted ways, each heading home after their unsuccessful attempt. The next morning, Izuku walked to school with Izumi by his side, grateful for her support. He expressed his hope not to become a burden to her, and Izumi reassured him that he would never be a burden. As they walked, Ayano approached, greeting them both with a friendly hug. Izumi felt a pang of jealousy but kept her composure. Ayano offered to help Izuku, and although Izumi was reluctant, she agreed. The trio made their way to school, where their friends awaited them. Upon seeing Izuku, Bakugo and Katsumi rushed over, shocked by his condition and eager to know what had happened. Izuku reassured Katsumi that there was nothing to worry about, but she was not convinced. She pressed him, concerned about his well-being. Izumi interjected, revealing that someone had attacked Izuku. Katsumi and Bakugo reacted with shock, demanding to know who had done it. Izuku explained that the assailant was no longer a threat, as he had met his end. The relief was palpable for Katsumi and Bakugo, though Katsumi secretly wished she could have been the one to confront him. Curious about their friends' reactions, the group decided to find out. As they approached their classmates, Izuku was quickly bombarded with questions about his injury. The room fell silent as he recounted the incident, leaving everyone stunned, especially Shoka, who felt a mix of anger and concern. She asked Izuku if it hurt, to which he replied that he could manage, though he preferred not to be hugged too tightly. Shoka, wanting to show her affection, hugged him gently, much to the dismay of the other girls, but Izuku reassured her that it was fine. As they prepared to head to class, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 reminded everyone that they needed to hurry. The group entered the school, unaware that Mason had witnessed Izuku's injury and was plotting something sinister, thinking it might work to his advantage. In class, whispers about Izuku's condition filled the air. Students speculated about his injury, but many hesitated to approach him, intimidated by the fierce expressions of Izumi, Katsumi, and Shoka, who were protective of their friend. They silently warned others to keep their distance, ensuring Izuku could rest. The teacher entered with a stack of papers, addressing the class about the recent loss of 4 students. The somber mood was briefly lifted when the teacher announced an early dismissal, which elicited cheers from the students. He then introduced a new student, Kotonoha, who had completed her work online and was joining them for the day. She introduced herself and took a seat next to Tatsumi. As the lesson progressed, the teacher assigned future career sheets, but the students were more interested in their upcoming lunch. When the bell rang, they rushed to the lunchroom, where the Izuku squad gathered to discuss their plans for the future. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 expressed the need to celebrate their last day of school, prompting suggestions for a party or dinner. Just then, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 approached them, shyly asking if she could join. The group welcomed her warmly, and she introduced herself to each member. They learned that she had done her schoolwork from home, which sparked a conversation about their experiences with a troublesome classmate named 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. As they spoke, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and his group approached, and the atmosphere shifted as the Izuku squad braced for his taunts. 𝐀𝐻𝐮𝐴 approached Izuku with a mischievous grin, eager to get his attention. He asked Izuku to stand up quickly, claiming he wanted to show something to the others. Reluctantly, Izuku complied, standing up to see what 𝐀𝐻𝐮𝐴 had in mind. Suddenly, 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 swung a baseball bat, striking Izuku on his side where he had a stitch. Izuku yelped in pain and fell to the ground, clutching his wound. His friends rushed to his side, alarmed by his distress. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 smirked, noting how Izuku cried out like a wounded animal. Bakugo, along with Shoto, 𝐬𝐮𝐴, Tatsumi, and Makoto, charged at 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 in a furious attempt to defend their friend. However, the other wealthy students intervened, leading to a chaotic brawl. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 sidestepped the fray, making his way toward Izuku, who was still on the floor. Just then, Katsumi stepped in front of 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴, placing her palm against his cheek and unleashing a powerful blast that sent him crashing into a lunch table. He held his burned cheek in shock, staring at his reflection in a mirror and lamenting the mark left on his face. Katsumi taunted him, suggesting he now had a face only a mother could love. Enraged, 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 summoned a katana and charged at her, but before he could strike, Shoka zipped past Katsumi, her icy brass knuckles glinting. She confronted 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴, furious over his earlier insults and his attack on Izuku. As 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 swung his katana, Shoka ducked and delivered a swift uppercut, causing him to cry out in agony. The boys around them winced in sympathy, feeling 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴's pain as he collapsed, holding himself in distress. Shoka glared down at him, declaring he would have no children. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴, sniffling, could only respond with anger and disbelief. Katsumi congratulated Shoka for stopping the next generation of troublemakers, to which Shoka jokingly asked for a cookie. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 glanced around, realizing his friends were losing the fight against Bakugo and the others. In a moment of desperation, he attempted to crawl away but was halted by Izumi, who stomped on his fingers. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 screamed in pain, threatening to sue everyone for ruining his life. He boasted about their futures being over when suddenly, a shocking event unfolded. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 appeared and, without hesitation, stabbed 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴 in the back with a handsaw, leaving him stunned. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 then approached Izuku, who was breathing heavily, and with determination, she lifted him to take him to the nurse's office. Izumi shouted after her, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was resolute in her mission to help Izuku. As they left, the remaining students were left in shock, while Katsumi and Shoka exchanged glances, plotting their next move against 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐴. Katsumi whispered her idea to Shoka, who smirked in agreement, ready to put their plan into action. Meanwhile, in the nurse's office, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 watched as Shoko inspected Izuku's injuries. Concerned, she asked if he would be all right. Shoko confirmed he would be but noted the poor quality of the stitches, indicating they needed to be redone. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 inquired about the time it would take, and Shoko assured her it would only be about 26 minutes. Izuku expressed his gratitude, and Shoko instructed 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to leave as she prepared to work on Izuku's wounds. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 walked out, leaving Shoko to focus on her task, determined to help Izuku recover properly. Shoko was focused on her task as she reassured Izuku, who seemed a bit anxious. She told him not to mention it, explaining that she was just doing what a nurse should do. Izuku acknowledged that doctors usually handle stitches, but Shoko pointed out that whoever had stitched him up before hadn't done a great job and might need to reconsider their profession. Izuku chuckled, suggesting that the person must have been in a hurry. Shoko, feeling a bit flustered, thought to herself that Izuku was quite cute, but quickly reminded herself of their age difference before shifting her focus back to the task at hand. She informed him that she didn't have the equipment to put him to sleep, so he should expect some discomfort. Izuku nodded, ready for her to begin. As Shoko worked on redoing Izuku's stitches, The scene shifted outside the school where police had arrived, accompanied by Detective 𝐻𝐿𝐵. They found 𝐵 on a stretcher and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 in 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐻𝐿𝐵 began to gather information from witnesses. One student explained that 𝐵 and a few others had approached a group and struck one of the boys, which led to a fight. 𝐻𝐿𝐵 noted that while this was partially true, there was more to the story. The student continued, claiming that 𝐵 had been thrown into a table, which 𝐻𝐿𝐵 confirmed. Another witness mentioned hearing bones break, which 𝐻𝐿𝐵 also noted as a mix of truth and exaggeration. When asked about a handsaw, the student admitted to hiding and not seeing anything, which 𝐻𝐿𝐵 suspected was not entirely accurate. After questioning the students, 𝐻𝐿𝐵 approached 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who was humming a tune. He informed her that he would ask some questions and expected honest answers. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 agreed, but when asked if she had participated in the fighting, she denied it. 𝐻𝐿𝐵 pressed further, asking if she had seen who was involved, to which she pointed to the unconscious students on the floor. When asked about the boy on the stretcher, she claimed ignorance, prompting 𝐻𝐿𝐵 to realize she was not being completely truthful. He assured her that she wouldn't be going to jail but would need to go to the police station for further questioning. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 followed him outside, where 𝐻𝐿𝐵 retrieved his keys. Suddenly, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 kicked 𝐻𝐿𝐵 in the back of the knee and attempted to strangle him with the _HNDCFFS. 𝐻𝐿𝐵 managed to elbow her in the gut, breaking free long enough to retrieve his taser. As he turned to use it, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 dodged and fled, prompting 𝐻𝐿𝐵 to call for backup. Before he could finish his message, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 threw a brick at him, knocking him down. She charged at him with another brick and struck him on the head, knocking him onto his back. As she climbed on top of him, she began to strike his face repeatedly. 𝐻𝐿𝐵, realizing he needed to regain control, managed to throw her off and slowly got back to his feet, wiping the blood from his face. He couldn't believe the ferocity of the girl he was dealing with. Just as he was regaining his composure, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lunged at him with a pocket knife, narrowly missing him as he fell to the ground again. Hearing the approaching officers, 𝐻𝐿𝐵 knew he had to act quickly. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, however, was determined not to go to jail. In a shocking move, she cut her shirt and breathes, creating confusion. She made small cuts on her arms and legs, then a cut on her cheek, smirking at 𝐻𝐿𝐵 before letting out a piercing scream. Her cry was loud enough to attract the attention of the police, who rushed to the side of the school. They found 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 curled up, visibly distressed, while 𝐻𝐿𝐵 struggled to get back up, realizing the situation was turning against him. As the officers approached, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 ran to them, crying and latching onto one of the officers for support. She sobbed, pointing at 𝐻𝐿𝐵 and claiming he had tried to harm her, leaving the police in shock at the unfolding scene. 𝐻𝐿𝐵 pleaded with the officers, insisting that he was innocent, but they were unyielding. They ordered him to the ground, and despite his protests, they swiftly tackled him and restrained him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 observed the scene with a smirk, contemplating who the officers would believe more, the defenseless girl or the grown man. The police took 𝐻𝐿𝐵 away, placing him in the back of a patrol car as they drove off from the school. Meanwhile, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was taken home, and shortly after, the school day ended. Students left with excitement, celebrating the arrival of summer. Izuku had his stitches redone and exchanged numbers with Shoko, just in case he needed help or wanted to chat. He smiled and hugged her, which made her smile in return, leaving her with mixed feelings. Izuku rejoined his friends, and they headed out for a celebratory dinner to mark the end of the school year and their victory over 𝐵 and his friends. Time passed, and everyone returned home after the enjoyable meal. As night fell, 𝐵 found himself in a hospital room, bandaged and surrounded by get-well-soon gifts. Anger boiled within him as he reflected on the humiliation he suffered. He thought about how he had been wronged, vowing that he would ruin the lives of those who dared to challenge him, especially Izuku. 𝐵 believed he would return stronger, as a king always does. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When 𝐵 called for the visitor to enter, he was surprised to see Ayano. She greeted him warmly, and he asked why she was there at such a late hour. Ayano revealed that she had brought him a gift, pulling out a syringe filled with a mysterious substance. Mason's confusion turned to concern as he hesitated, expressing his reluctance to receive another injection. Ayano urged him to relax, assuring him it would be over quickly. Mason tried to call for the nurse, but Ayano prevented him from reaching the bell, gripping him tightly as she aimed the needle at his neck. Just then, Lucy emerged from the shadows, brandishing a scythe and demanding Ayano back off. Ayano insisted that she wanted to be the one to take Mason's life, recalling how he had disrespected her in the past. Mason stammered, trying to defend himself, but Ayano silenced him. Tension escalated as Lucy declared her intent to kill Mason for sending an assassin after Izuku, revealing the source of Izuku's injuries. Ayano and Lucy argued over who had the right to Mason's life, and just as they were about to clash, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 entered the room, wielding her crimson spear and claiming Mason as her target. The three girls faced off, each determined to settle the score with Mason. Mason, terrified and confused, questioned what they saw in Izuku, whom he deemed a nobody. Ayano, Lucy, and 𝐻𝐻𝐿 defended him, each expressing their admiration for his character and strength. Just then, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 appeared, holding a handsaw and confronting Mason about his actions. Mason realized he was surrounded by those who cared for Izuku, and as the girls shared their feelings for him, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's emotions surfaced, revealing her past hurt from a cheating ex. The girls rallied around her, affirming their belief in Izuku's integrity. As they continued to discuss their feelings for Izuku, the atmosphere shifted, and the girls united in their determination to protect him from those who would harm him. As they all gripped their weapons, preparing to confront one another, Mason began to laugh, blood trickling from his mouth. He mocked them, questioning how they could believe they stood a chance against anyone, let alone someone like him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 approached and covered Mason's mouth with a smile, then began to saw at his legs. His screams filled the air as 𝐻𝐻𝐿 joined her, plunging her hand into Mason's abdomen and pulling out his intestines, forcing them into his mouth. Once 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 finished with Mason's legs, she and 𝐻𝐻𝐿 stepped back, observing him as he lay there, crying and helpless. Ayano looked at him with disdain, calling him pathetic, while Lucy pointed out his lack of limbs. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 added her own taunt, comparing him to a piece of refuse. Mason, in a moment of desperation, called them insane. Ayano dismissed his claim, asserting that they were simply love-stricken girls with deadly intentions. She then grabbed Mason by the throat and walked him to the window, smiling as she prepared to throw him out. With a swift motion, she hurled him out, and his screams echoed until he hit the ground below, leaving the four girls looking down at his lifeless body with satisfaction. Ayano declared that no one would ever hurt Izuku again, and 𝐻𝐻𝐿 agreed, expressing her happiness at Mason's demise. Lucy then mentioned her mission was complete, and now she needed to find a way to bear Izuku's children. The moment those words left her lips, the atmosphere shifted, and the girls exchanged tense glances before aiming their weapons at one another. Ayano pointed her knife at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who retaliated with her saw blade, while Lucy aimed her scythe at 𝐻𝐻𝐿, who readied 2 crimson spears. Their eyes glinted with determination, each wanting to see the other fall. The tension escalated as they prepared for battle, each declaring that only one would leave alive. Ayano and 𝐻𝐻𝐿 exchanged insults, and the fight erupted. Ayano lunged at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who parried her attack and countered with a slash that caught Ayano off guard, causing her to stumble in pain. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 attempted to finish her off, but Ayano managed to block the blow and sweep 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 off her feet, going for a stab, only for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to evade and regain her footing. Despite their injuries, both girls refused to back down, fueled by their shared longing for Izuku. Just as they were about to clash again, the doorknob rattled, drawing their attention. In a panic, they jumped out the window and scattered in different directions as the doctor entered the room, horrified by the sight of Mason's body on the ground below. The news of his death spread quickly, reaching Izuku, who was jolted awake by his phone's incessant notifications. He was shocked to find images of Mason's lifeless form, realizing the gravity of the situation. Izumi entered his room equally surprised, and they both grappled with their mixed emotions about Mason's death. While Izuku tried to process the news, we shifted to the Yaoyorozu household, where Liam and Natalia were grappling with their grief. Natalia cried for her son, while Momo attempted to comfort her mother. Suddenly, Liam's frustration boiled over, and he lashed out, shattering a glass in his anger. He expressed his devastation over Mason's death, blaming Momo for not understanding his pain. Momo, shocked and hurt, tried to remind him that they were still a family, but Liam's rage only escalated, leading to a confrontation that left Momo in tears. The emotional turmoil within each character set the stage for the unfolding drama, as the consequences of their actions began to ripple through their lives. Natalia expressed her concern about Momo's ability to handle the situation, but before she could finish, Liam struck her in the stomach, causing her to fall to her knees. He then grabbed her by the hair and began dragging her upstairs. Momo quickly sprang to her feet and attempted to pull Liam away from her mother, but he retaliated with a swift motion that sent her crashing to the floor. Liam warned Momo to stay down if she valued her safety. In response, Momo summoned a switchblade and managed to slice the back of Liam's ankle, causing him to stumble and release Natalia. Momo helped her mother to her feet, urging her to leave. Natalia, still shaken, agreed, but just as they began to escape, Liam regained his footing and seized both of them by their hair, pulling them back down. He shouted in frustration, demanding to know where they thought they were going. Momo prepared to create another weapon, but Liam stomped on her leg, causing her to cry out in pain as she clutched her injury. He then turned his attention back to Natalia, insisting they go upstairs. In a moment of desperation, Natalia attempted to resist, but Liam struck her in the face, sending her sprawling to the ground. Liam then walked into the kitchen, retrieved a bottle of wine, and began drinking. Meanwhile, Momo managed to create a crutch and slowly rose to her feet, trying to escape the house. However, Liam struck her from behind with the wine bottle, knocking her unconscious. Natalia, fueled by fear and determination, scrambled to her feet and dashed upstairs, locking herself in her room just as Liam reached her. He pounded on the door, demanding she open it, but she stood firm, declaring that she was calling the police. Inside her room, Natalia picked up the house phone and dialed 911, anxiously waiting for the operator to answer. She silently urged them to pick up, her heart racing with hope. After a tense moment, the operator finally responded, and Natalia felt a wave of relief wash over her as she began to explain her situation. Natalia was in a panic, her heart racing as she watched Liam crash through the window. She quickly unlocked the door and dashed downstairs, with Liam getting back up and chasing after her. He shouted for her to stop. Once he reached the bottom, he found Momo gone and the front door wide open. Rushing outside, he saw Natalia's car pulling out of the driveway and speeding away. Desperate, Liam jumped into his car and took off after her, determined not to let her escape. Meanwhile, Natalia was on the phone, hoping for a quick answer. After a few tense moments, her sister picked up, and Natalia felt a wave of relief wash over her. Her sister asked how she was doing, and Natalia replied that she was fine, but she needed a favor. She asked if she and Momo could stay at her sister's house for a while. Her sister agreed, but noticed something was off with Natalia's voice. Just as Natalia was about to reassure her, she was jolted forward as Liam rammed into her car from behind. In shock, she dropped her phone and glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing Liam close behind. Her sister, concerned, asked what was happening, but Natalia had to hang up quickly as she swerved into another street to escape. Liam was relentless, ramming into her car again, trying to force her off the road. Frustrated, Natalia thought about how persistent he was. Momo, who had been groggy, finally registered what was happening. Natalia reassured her that they were just taking a detour to her aunt's house. Momo, feeling empowered, declared that she would handle Liam. With determination, Momo asked Natalia to roll down the window. As Natalia complied, Momo aimed a grenade launcher at Liam, who was taken aback. She fired, and the grenade rolled under Liam's car, causing a massive explosion that flipped his vehicle onto its roof, igniting it in flames. Momo cheered, relieved, and Natalia urged her to hurry to her aunt's house. As they drove away, Liam crawled out of his burning car, filled with rage and despair at losing them. He fell to his knees, screaming in frustration before collapsing in tears, hitting the concrete in agony. Just then his car exploded, sending him flying and leaving him unconscious, bloodied, and alone as sirens approached. Hours later, as dawn broke, Liam awoke in a hospital bed, confused about his surroundings. The doctor entered and explained that he had been found near a burning vehicle with a head injury. If they hadn't acted quickly, he might not have survived. When asked about his wife, Liam admitted he had no idea where she was. After the doctor left, memories flooded back to Liam, particularly of chasing after Natalia. Anger surged within him as he punched the wall, vowing that she would return to him, one way or another. Meanwhile, at his sister's house, Momo and Natalia were settling in. Momo was still shaken from the previous day's events. When her aunt asked what had happened, Momo broke down and confessed that Liam had hurt both her and Natalia. She felt betrayed, realizing that the love he had shown them was nothing but a facade. Her aunt comforted her, assuring her that they were safe now and that Liam could no longer hurt them. Momo pleaded to stay longer, terrified of returning to Liam. Her aunt promised that they could stay as long as they needed, vowing to protect them. In another part of town, Rose was working on a drone that had been sabotaged. Frustrated by her lack of progress, she received a call from Liam. He was desperate, asking for help to find his missing wife. Rose, however, had no intention of getting involved. She informed him that she had quit and suggested he find someone else to handle his problems. Liam, undeterred, hinted that he had someone else on the line, leaving Rose curious about what he had planned next. Rose recognized the familiar voice and felt a mix of surprise and annoyance. It had been a long time since she had last seen 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴. He had a way of appearing when least expected, and this time was no different. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 greeted her with a casual tone, reminding her of their past encounters. Rose, however, was not in the mood for pleasantries. She confronted him directly, demanding to know what he wanted. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴, unfazed by her attitude, continued with his request, expecting her to comply. Yayarozu understood what she needed to do. Rose was determined, but 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 challenged her. He mentioned a boy she had feelings for, Izuku, and Rose slammed her fist onto her desk, causing both Liam and 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 to take notice. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 felt a sense of satisfaction from her reaction. Rose warned 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 to stay away from Izuku, vowing that if he approached him, she would take action. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 acknowledged her fierce spirit, reminding her of the strength he had instilled in her. Liam then informed Rose that she had a week to find Natalia and bring her back. Reluctantly, Rose agreed, knowing the stakes involved. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 emphasized that Izuku's life was on the line, and after hanging up, Rose clenched her fist in frustration, even punching a hole through her desk in anger. Monica, who had been watching, commented on Rose's mood. When Rose asked how much of the conversation Monica had overheard, Monica admitted she had heard everything. Rose warned Monica not to harm her father, insisting that it was her responsibility to deal with him. Rose then asked Monica to track down Liam's wife. After some playful banter, Monica agreed and disappeared from Rose's phone. Rose prepared herself, grabbing her katana and dual pistols, ensuring they were fully loaded. She was resolute in her mission to protect Izuku, even if it meant confronting Natalia. Monica soon returned with the location of Natalia, revealing she was on Bungo Street. Rose thanked her and set off, determined to bring Natalia back to Liam. Meanwhile, Momo was at the park, reflecting on her past while watching parents bond with their children. She felt a pang of sadness, realizing that her father had never shown her the same affection. As Momo walked home, a group of guys blocked her path. They offered to walk her home, but she declined. After she passed them, one of the guys grabbed her from behind and pulled her into an alleyway, covering her mouth. They revealed they knew Mason and expected something from her in return for a debt he owed. Momo felt a surge of fear as they discussed taking her to their place. Just then, Izuku appeared, having heard Momo's distress. He swiftly intervened, taking down the attackers with impressive skill. Momo watched in shock as Izuku fought bravely, knocking out one after another until they were all incapacitated. He then reached out to Momo, offering his hand to help her up. Momo accepted his hand, grateful for his timely arrival. Izuku explained that he had heard a scream and rushed to help. They began walking back to her aunt's house, and Momo felt comforted by the warmth of Izuku's hand in hers. As they walked, She smiled, appreciating the moment and the safety he provided. Izuku asked if she was all right, and Momo admitted she was just thinking. He inquired if it was about Mason, but she tried to push those thoughts aside, acknowledging the difficulty of moving on from her brother's actions. Izuku understood the situation, but he wanted to make it clear that despite his brother's flaws, there was someone looking out for him, doing her best to guide him. Momo was taken aback by this revelation, wondering about the identity of this guardian angel. Izuku reassured Momo, reminding her that she had always been there for her friend and that his passing was not her fault. Momo expressed her gratitude, feeling a warmth in her heart as Izuku smiled at her. She blushed and looked away, causing Izuku to wonder if something was wrong. Momo insisted she was fine, and they continued walking to her aunt's house. Unbeknownst to them, Chika was perched on a rooftop with her sisters, observing the two through a sniper scope. Toyomi commented on the apparent affection between Momo and Izuku, while Meiha agreed. Chika contemplated taking a shot but realized she was out of bullets. The sisters bickered about who was supposed to bring the ammunition before deciding to leave the area. As Momo and Izuku arrived at her apartment, Momo thanked him once more. Izuku mentioned he needed to head home before his sisters started looking for him. Momo had two things she wanted to ask him. First, she inquired about his cane, to which Izuku explained he had been injured. Then, she asked about his future plans, and he revealed his intention to attend you. Momo was excited to hear they would see each other again, and they said their goodbyes. After Izuku left, Momo entered her dark apartment, closing the door behind her. She was startled by a click sound and turned to find Rose sitting in a chair in the corner. Rose greeted her, and Momo, feeling fearful, asked who she was and how she had entered. Rose instructed her to take a seat, and Momo complied, trembling. Rose revealed she was looking for Momo's mother and demanded to know her whereabouts. Momo hesitated, but before she could respond, a bullet whizzed past her, narrowly missing her head. Rose, holding a silent pistol, repeated her question. Momo disclosed that her mother was at the supermarket with her aunt, and Rose decided they would wait for their return. Suddenly, Rose's phone rang, and she glared at Momo before stepping into the kitchen to answer it. On the other end was Monica, who urged Rose to abort her mission. Rose was confused and asked why, only to be interrupted by a sudden crash. 3 throwing knives struck Rose, causing her to fall to her knees. She attempted to draw her gun, but another knife hit it, disassembling the weapon. Before Rose could process what was happening, she was struck by a spin kick that sent her crashing into the next room. Momo watched in shock as a new figure emerged, introducing herself as 𝐬, the friendly neighborhood thorn princess. Rose removed the 3 knives from her body and leaped out the window, making a swift escape. She glanced back to see 𝐬 pursuing her, getting closer with each stride. In a moment of desperation, Rose jumped onto another rooftop, with 𝐬 hot on her heels, determined not to let her escape. The chase continued for nearly an hour until 𝐬 finally decided to change her approach. 𝐬 halted her pursuit and pulled out a hook and chain, skillfully attaching them together. She swung the hook and aimed to ensnare Rose's legs, but instead, it struck her knee. Rose let out a cry of pain as 𝐬 pulled her closer, sending her crashing onto the roof tiles. Sighing, 𝐬 addressed her. "Well, I guess that works. Now who sent you?" "Liam Yayarozu," Rose replied, her voice strained. "Oh, that was easy," 𝐬 remarked. "If you're going to eliminate him, I think he's still at the hospital. If not, he's at the Yayarosa mansion. Just don't tell him I told you," Rose added. "Agreed, and you'll leave my family alone." 𝐬 inquired. "Once you take care of Liam, then I'll go," Rose confirmed. 𝐬 was surprised by how easily Rose divulged this information. "Just like you, I have someone close to protect. To be honest, I quit a few days ago but got dragged back into this mess," Rose admitted. "Well, prepare to retire soon," 𝐬 replied before running off, leaving Rose behind. She sighed in relief, slowly getting back up and heading back to the warehouse. Meanwhile, Ayano was in her room, slow dancing with a teddy bear that had a picture of Izuku on it. She wished she had mustered the courage to ask him to prom, reflecting on the regrets that lingered in life. Kotonoha appeared at her window, startling Ayano. "Can I come in?" Kotonoha asked. "No, Go away, Ayano replied. Come on. Came to talk? No violence, let's talk like ladies, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 insisted. Ayano eyed her with suspicion but eventually opened the window, allowing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to crawl into her room. The walls were adorned with pictures of Izuku. Wow. You really love Izuku? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 observed. Yeah, he's my soulmate, Ayano affirmed. I'm not sure if this is genuine love or a huge obsession, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 remarked. It's genuine, Ayano insisted. Okay, no need to raise your voice. I got it, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 replied. Anyway, what do you want to talk about? Ayano asked. After our little fight at the hospital, I've been thinking we should work together, Ayano interrupted. I'm going to stop you right there. The answer is no. You don't even know what I was about to say, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 protested. You want to share Izuku, right? Ayano accused. Yes, but listen, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 began. No. I'm not sharing my husband with you or anyone else. I'll be his only wife because the rest of you will be gone, Ayano declared. I'm guessing there's no reasoning with you, huh? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said. Nope. If you value your life, leave my room and don't come back, Ayano warned. You might regret this decision later on. Plus, you said it yourself, some things in life you'll always regret, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 countered. This won't be one of those times. Now go, Ayano insisted. Fine. Bye, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said as she crawled back out the window and ran off. Ayano closed her window, muttering to herself about not sharing Izuku with anyone, not even Kaguya. She lay back on her bed, sighing, unaware that her mother had been listening in on the conversation with a smile on her face. As time passed, nothing of significance occurred until the moon rose. Liam sat in his office, sipping wine while flipping through a photo book of women he had encountered. He sighed, lamenting that none of them could replace 𝗀𝗫𝐴, the only one who could bear him another prodigy. Frustrated, he overturned his desk in a fit of rage, breathing heavily. Suddenly he heard a knock at his office door. Who is it? Is anyone there? He called out, growing irritated. He stood up and opened the door, finding no one there, which only fueled his anger. Is this a joke? Security! Where is everyone? Liam shouted as he stepped out of his office, noticing the absence of guards in the hallways. He made his way downstairs, confusion growing as he found the living room empty. I swear there were guards here a moment ago. Where is everybody? Liam muttered, searching the area until he spotted a note on the bar counter. He picked it up, reading it aloud. From Sebastian, Dear 𝐒𝐮𝐴, I just have one thing to say to you, my good sir. Karma has come to collect its debt. Before he could finish, a golden blade pierced through the back of his throat, causing him to fall to the floor, gasping for air. Struggling, he attempted to crawl toward the stairs, but another blade struck his leg, sending him tumbling down. Desperate, he thought to call for help, but his voice interrupted him. Don't bother, Liam. It's no use. He turned in shock to see you approaching him. By the time you get up the stairs, you'll be dead, she stated calmly. Yeah, he stammered, realizing the gravity of the situation. You felt a surge of determination as she faced Liam. She swiftly drew her golden blades, her movements precise and calculated. In a swift motion, she incapacitated him, leaving him slumped over. With a sigh, she muttered to herself that this was just personal. Afterward, you made her way to the bathroom, washing the remnants of the encounter from her weapons. She gazed at her reflection in the mirror, contemplating her return to a life of violence. She hoped this would be a one-time affair, but if it wasn't, she would accept it. Once she finished cleaning her blades, she ascended the stairs, leaped through a window, and vanished into the night like a shadow. As dawn broke, Makoto stirred from his sleep. He stretched and headed toward the bathroom to brush his teeth. Just as he was about to enter, his phone rang, drawing his attention. He answered the call, still groggy. Good morning, Niji, a voice chimed on the other end. Makoto recognized the voice immediately. Oh, good morning, Kyoko. Did you sleep well? She inquired. Makoto replied, Yes, how about you? I slept. Decently, Kyoko responded. Decently, he echoed, curious about her night. Kyoko expressed her concern about the recent murders, admitting that she had been preoccupied with the troubling events. Makoto agreed, noting the alarming situation of someone killing people in the city. Reassured him that the heroes would eventually uncover the truth behind the chaos. Makoto mentioned he was about to brush his teeth and have breakfast but paused to talk to her. Kyoko found his thoughtfulness sweet and invited him to join her for breakfast. Just as she was about to suggest a location, her phone began to glitch, startling her. She called out to Makoto, but he could barely hear her as the connection faltered, and the call abruptly ended. Both were left confused, with Makoto wondering if the issue was on his end or hers, while Kyoko felt frustrated at the interruption. Meanwhile, in 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐵's room, she wore a smug grin, having intentionally disrupted Kyoko's call. She thought to herself that Kyoko would have to try harder next time. Makoto, unaware of the interference, headed to the bathroom to brush his teeth and shower. In the meantime, 𝐀𝐮𝐬 entered his room, accessed his phone, and called Kyoko again. When she answered, Kyoko was surprised to hear 𝐀𝐮𝐬's voice. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 playfully addressed Kyoko as Mrs. Detective, to which Kyoko responded with annoyance, asking why she had Makoto's phone. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 countered by asking why Kyoko had her brother's number. Kyoko explained it was to talk to him, requesting 𝐀𝐮𝐬 to pass the phone to Makoto. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 informed her that he was in the shower and would be occupied for a while. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 then warned Kyoko to stay away from her brother, asserting her claim over him. Kyoko, unfazed, teased that it would be a shame to see Makoto upset at 𝐀𝐮𝐬's funeral, but she would be there to comfort him in her own way. The call ended abruptly, leaving 𝐀𝐮𝐬 fuming as she put down the phone and stormed out of the room before Makoto emerged from the bathroom. A few minutes later, Makoto stepped out, dressed for the day, and made his way downstairs. He found his mother on the couch, watching TV, and greeted her with a warm hug, which brought a smile to her face. She informed him that breakfast was ready, and he thanked her before heading into the kitchen to prepare his meal. Just then, 𝐀𝐮𝐬 rushed downstairs and playfully tackled Makoto, hugging him tightly. She greeted him enthusiastically, and he returned her greeting with a chuckle. Their mother reminded 𝐀𝐮𝐬 that breakfast was ready, to which 𝐀𝐮𝐬 responded affirmatively, asking if their mother had eaten. She confirmed that she had already finished. As they sat at the table enjoying breakfast, 𝐀𝐮𝐬 couldn't help but admire Makoto's features, thinking about how cute he looked. When Makoto noticed her staring, he asked if something was wrong. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 quickly dismissed it and asked about his plans for the day. He admitted he wasn't sure what to do, prompting 𝐀𝐮𝐬 to suggest they go out together. Before she could finish her thought, there was a knock at the door, drawing the family's attention. Makoto got up and opened the door to find a familiar face. The figure embraced him tightly, and he reciprocated the gesture, greeting her warmly. Sayaka, with a bright smile, asked how he was doing, and he replied that he was well. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 felt a surge of jealousy as she watched the interaction. Sayaka, noticing 𝐀𝐮𝐬, greeted her with a hint of annoyance. 𝐀𝐮𝐬 returned the greeting, trying to maintain her composure. Sayaka then shifted the conversation to ask Makoto if he was free next Wednesday, revealing that she would be performing with her group at a central venue and wanted him to attend. Makoto expressed his willingness to go but hesitated, mentioning he might not have enough money. Sayaka quickly produced a VIP ticket for him, surprising both siblings. She assured him it was a special invitation just for him. 𝐀𝐮𝐬's thoughts raced, feeling possessive over her brother. Sayaka, pleased with Makoto's response, bid farewell, leaving him excited about the upcoming concert. As she walked away, she climbed into a limo parked nearby, waving back at Makoto, who waved in return. Makoto's mother teased him about Sayaka's intentions, suggesting that she might be trying to make her a grandmother sooner than expected. Makoto was taken aback by the comment, while 𝐀𝐮𝐬 felt a sense of urgency, realizing that she needed to act quickly to prevent anything from happening between them. Makoto mentioned that he would be busy next Wednesday, and 𝐀𝐮𝐬 responded that if anyone needed her, she would be in her room. Afterward, she went upstairs, closed the door, and picked up her phone to call Toko. When Toko didn't answer right away, 𝐀𝐮𝐬 felt a bit anxious, waiting for her to pick up. Meanwhile, Toko was on her bed, lost in her thoughts and fantasies. She was caught up in a moment of intense imagination, feeling overwhelmed by the sensations. Suddenly, her phone rang repeatedly, interrupting her focus. Frustrated, she grabbed her taser and, in a moment of impulsiveness, activated it, which triggered her alter ego, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. She quickly answered the call. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 answered with a loud exclamation, clearly annoyed by the interruption. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 greeted her, and Jack groaned, expressing her irritation. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 explained that she needed Jack to handle a situation for her. Jack, intrigued, asked if it was another one of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's crushes, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 clarified that it was actually a rival. Jack, always ready for action, asked for the name, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 provided it. 𝐬𝐭𝐻𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨. Jack recognized her as a pop star and assured 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 that it would be taken care of. After the call ended, Jack returned to her previous activities, eager to continue her fun. Just then, the door to her room swung open, and her mother walked in, catching her off guard. Fukuwa entered the room, cheerfully announcing that the muffins were ready, but was quickly interrupted by Sayo's loud outburst, demanding her to leave. Fukuwa chuckled and went back downstairs. Meanwhile, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 opened her notebook, revealing a list of names. She glared at Sayaka's name, feeling a surge of anger. Sayaka had shown up at her doorstep, handing tickets to Makoto and implying that he would marry her, which only fueled 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's frustration. However, she felt reassured knowing Toko would handle things. With a sigh, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 headed downstairs, only to find that Makoto was missing. She asked her mother where he had gone, and Ms. Niji informed her that he was at the dojo meeting someone. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 realized this explained his frequent absences and decided to hang out with her friends instead. As she left the house, she headed to Mikan's place, unconcerned about Makoto being around girls at the dojo, mistakenly thinking it was only men. At the dojo, Makoto walked in and noticed a large crowd. He was surprised to see parents with their children and both boys and girls training. Just then he was unexpectedly flung into the air but managed to land on his feet. One of his dojo partners, Tenko, greeted him, expressing her disappointment at not having caught him this time. Tenko had been waiting for him, and Makoto, amused, assured her that he was ready to train. Once dressed in his karate outfit, they took their positions on the mat. They both rushed at each other, executing simultaneous spin kicks that collided with their legs. Tenko unleashed a flurry of punches, which Makoto skillfully blocked. When she attempted to sweep his legs, he caught himself and performed a backflip, countering with punches that she either blocked or dodged. Tenko complimented Makoto on his improvement, curious if he had been training with anyone else. He assured her he hadn't, but before they could continue, another figure interrupted them. Makoto barely blocked a strike from a kendo stick, feeling a sting in his arm. He quickly grabbed a kendo stick and charged at the newcomer, who parried his attack effortlessly. The figure introduced herself as Piko Pikoyama, who seemed to have arrived late but was eager to join in. She swiftly struck Tenko in the knee, causing her to jump in pain. Piko then turned her attention to Makoto, catching him in a hold that left him momentarily stunned. As he struggled, Tenko intervened, gripping Piko's waist and throwing her against the dojo wall. The two girls then squared off, exchanging kicks and punches that drew the attention of everyone around. Makoto, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sighed, knowing this was a typical occurrence between them. He wondered about their other friends, especially Izuku, who was still recovering from an accident. Deciding to check in, he stepped outside and called Izuku. While waiting for Izuku to answer, Makoto noticed a yellow van parked a few streets away, which made him uneasy. When Izuku picked up, they exchanged pleasantries, but Makoto explained the chaos at the dojo. He hesitated to intervene, especially after witnessing the grandmaster of the dojo take a hard fall, clearly injured. Izuku expressed understanding, and as they continued their conversation, Makoto's attention was drawn back to the van, which had moved closer. He decided to cut the call short, sensing something was off. After hanging up, he approached the grandmaster, who was recovering from his injuries, and inquired about the 𝐬𝐿. Makoto let out a groan as he observed the light blue color of the van, but his attention quickly shifted to a yellow van 2 streets down. He decided to step away from the dojo to test something out. As he walked down the street, he turned the corner and entered a laundromat, quickly hiding behind a washer. Peeking out, he spotted the same yellow van cruising down the street. A sense of dread washed over him as he caught a glimpse of the driver, noticing a tiger tattoo on their hand. He quickly ducked back behind the washer, feeling a wave of anxiety. The van passed by the laundromat and turned onto the next street. After a moment, Makoto sighed in relief, thinking about how close he had come to being seen. He exited the laundromat and hurried back to the dojo, reminding himself to stay vigilant and cautious. As he ran, someone on the other side of the street recognized him. A familiar voice called out to him, and Makoto turned to see Hajime, a friend from his previous school before he had to move. They exchanged greetings and embraced, both excited to see each other again. Hajime asked how Makoto was doing, and they chatted about their summer plans. Hajime suggested grabbing a bite to eat at a nearby sandwich shop, and Makoto agreed. Unbeknownst to them, a sniper was perched on a rooftop, observing the two boys through a scope. The sniper reported back to their superior, confirming that Makoto was not alone and that he was with a male friend. The superior instructed the sniper to keep following them, ensuring that Makoto remained in sight. As they walked to the sandwich shop, the sniper found a suitable spot on the roof to keep an eye on the boys. Inside the shop, Makoto and Hajime placed their orders, continuing their conversation. Hajime noticed Makoto glancing out the window frequently, which piqued his curiosity. Makoto reassured him that everything was fine, but he was secretly hoping he wouldn't see anyone he feared. Their sandwiches arrived, and they enjoyed their meal while Valkyrie, the sniper, continued to watch them. Suddenly, she spotted the yellow van approaching. Looking through her scope, she recognized the tiger tattoo on the driver's hand. She reported back to her superior, who ordered her to stop the van. As the driver and his companion were caught off guard, chaos ensued. The driver was suddenly incapacitated, leaving the remaining men in shock. Valkyrie, realizing the situation was escalating, prepared to take action as instructed. Meanwhile, Makoto had just returned from the restroom and resumed his conversation with Hajime. They discussed their friends and the changes since Makoto had moved. Hajime expressed concern about Mikan, who had been missing for weeks. Makoto recalled seeing her recently and offered to call her. When Mikan answered, she seemed surprised to hear from him. Makoto explained that Hajime was with him and handed the phone over. Hajime asked about her sudden disappearance, and Mikan reassured him that she was fine, though she could sense their worry. After a brief conversation, Makoto had to take another call, apologizing to Mikan for the interruption. Just as he was about to hang up, Tenko unexpectedly joined the call, demanding to know Makoto's whereabouts. The situation was becoming increasingly complicated, but Makoto was determined to navigate through it all. Mikan, a friend from school, was surprised to learn that Makoto trained at a dojo. Tenko, a fellow dojo member, expressed curiosity about how Mikan knew Makoto. Mikan, feeling a bit defensive, reminded Tenko that she was Makoto's childhood friend. Makoto tried to ease the tension, but Mikan's protective instincts kicked in. Tenko, concerned about Makoto's whereabouts, insisted he return to the dojo. Mikan was taken aback by the dynamic between them. Makoto reassured Tenko that he was with a friend, and when Tenko asked if it was another girl, he clarified it was a guy. Tenko, eager to see Makoto, asked him to come back soon. After hanging up, Mikan felt frustrated and threw a medical bottle against the wall, venting her anger at the unexpected competition for Makoto's attention. Meanwhile, Makoto walked down the street, keeping an eye out for a suspicious yellow van. As he calmed down, he accidentally bumped into a stranger. The man, sporting a recognizable tattoo, questioned Makoto about his family. Sensing trouble, Makoto quickly decided to leave, but the man insisted he recognized him and mentioned his brother's debts to a dangerous group. In a moment of panic, Makoto reacted instinctively, drop-kicking the man and fleeing. As he ran, he was pursued by several others who emerged from an alley. Using his agility, he evaded them, but they were relentless. Desperate, he grabbed a bottle from the ground and threw it, hitting one of his pursuers. As he navigated through a skating park, chaos ensued when skaters collided with the chasing men, creating a pileup. Only one pursuer remained, but he soon grew frustrated and pulled out a weapon. Just as he aimed at Makoto, a gunshot rang out, and the man fell to the ground, leaving Makoto in shock. Unbeknownst to him, Valkyrie, a skilled protector, had intervened from a rooftop. After confirming Makoto's safety, she reported back to her superior about the incident involving the triad. Makoto, still shaken, sat on a bench, trying to process what had just happened. He was approached by Yuruko, a familiar face from his neighborhood, who noticed his distress. Though reluctant to share, Makoto eventually confided in her about the dangers he faced due to his brother's debts. Yuruko listened intently, offering her support and promising to help him through this difficult time. She handed him a juice box, which he found surprisingly sweet. Their bond deepened as they navigated the challenges ahead, united against the threats looming over them. Makoto felt a wave of relaxation wash over him as he sat on the bench with Yuruko. He continued to sip from his juice box while they chatted, but soon he noticed a dizzy sensation creeping in. Yuruko, observing his state, asked if he was okay. Makoto responded that everyone seemed to be dizzy. Yuruko chuckled to herself, realizing he had become tipsy quite quickly, and suggested they head home. Despite his protests about Tenko being able to manage on her own, Yuruko insisted they leave. Makoto wanted to linger on the bench a bit longer, but Yuruko gently urged him to get up. As they walked, Makoto began to doze off, prompting Yuruko to scoop him up and carry him toward his house. She marveled at how light he was, pondering how someone so innocent could face so many struggles. Upon reaching his house, Yuruko was about to knock on the door when 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 appeared, glaring at her. Unfazed, Yuruko greeted 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿, who immediately demanded to know what had happened to Makoto. Yuruko explained that she had given him something to help him relax, but 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 was not convinced. She accused Yuruko of drugging her brother, and in a moment of anger, she grabbed Yuruko by the collar. Yuruko defended herself, claiming that Makoto was simply drunk. Tensions escalated, and 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿, frustrated, punched Yuruko in the face. Though Yuruko stumbled back, she managed to keep hold of Makoto. Angered, she set him down and pulled out a shock baton, ready to confront 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿. The two charged at each other, and as they clashed, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 ducked and swept Yuruko's legs, causing her to fall. Yuruko quickly rolled away just in time to avoid 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿's foot. She retaliated by shocking 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿's leg, making her drop to her knees. The fight continued as they exchanged blows, each grappling for demps. They rolled around on the grass, both sustaining minor injuries. Eventually, they stood up, glaring at each other, both bleeding. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 declared that it was time to end the fight, and Yuruko agreed. They circled each other warily before rushing at one another again. Just then, Ms. Niji opened the front door and stepped outside, witnessing the two girls in a fierce standoff. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿, in a moment of camaraderie, declared Yuruko her best friend, while Yuruko thought to herself that 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 had been fortunate to have her mother intervene. Ms. Niji, concerned about their injuries, asked why they were bleeding and why Makoto was sleeping on the grass. Yuruko quickly explained that he was tired and that they had both tripped. Ms. Niji insisted they come inside so she could patch them up, and both girls agreed. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 took it upon herself to carry Makoto inside, despite her disappointment at the situation. Meanwhile, at the Tiger Yakuza headquarters, the boss was sharpening a katana. She questioned a subordinate about their failure to locate a certain individual. The subordinate hesitated, explaining that they were indeed searching for him but felt it was a waste of time. The boss, unimpressed, sighed and dismissed him, hinting at the importance of their mission while expressing her frustration with the current situation. The figure appeared behind the man, who suddenly froze as they looked down at the katana, noticing blood on the blade. The figure cleaned the blade and sheathed it at their hip. In a swift motion, the man's head was struck, and the upper half slid down, hitting the ground with a dull thud. The figure then addressed the remaining onlookers, asserting that no one else had anything to say. Satisfied with their silence, the figure instructed them to leave. They bowed and quickly exited the room, while the figure returned to their previous spot, continuing to sharpen the katana. Pikoyama emerged from the corner of the room, and the figure, Natsumi, asked her if she thought Niji would appreciate her tattoos. Pikoyama assured her that he wouldn't mind. Natsumi expressed her hopes and inquired about any potential competition. Pikoyama mentioned that Tenko should be the only concern but promised to double-check. Natsumi paused her sharpening, examining the blade's edge while a determined look filled her eyes. She resolved to eliminate anyone who stood in her way of winning Makoto's affection. Pikoyama acknowledged her request and left, allowing Natsumi to dream about her plans to win him over. Meanwhile, at the Dragon Mafia's headquarters, Valkyrie was in the boss's office discussing a potential connection between their associates and the Demon Triad. Valkyrie expressed uncertainty but acknowledged the possibility. The boss instructed her to keep an eye on the situation, emphasizing the importance of ensuring nothing bad happened. Valkyrie agreed but raised a concern about a man who owed them a significant sum of money. The boss reassured her that he would eventually appear, and they would reclaim what was owed. Dismissed, Valkyrie exited the office, pulling out 4 photographs: Mr. Niji, Ms. Niji, Kamura Niji, and finally Makoto Niji. The boss, Godiva, picked up Makoto's photo, admiring his smile for a moment before her expression turned serious. She lamented the necessity of her plans, which might involve kidnapping him to secure the money owed. As Godiva contemplated her strategy, the scene shifted to the Demon Triad, where one of the bosses was berating a goon for failing to capture a target. The goon stammered an apology, but the boss's frustration escalated, leading to a sudden and shocking act of violence as he shot the goon multiple times. The remaining goons fled the room, terrified. The boss sighed, questioning the incompetence of his crew. His companion, Sally, noted that they were merely street thugs, lacking any real value. Sally remarked that they served as good stress relievers, to which the boss agreed. Just then, the door opened, and a boy with white hair entered, holding a can of orange soda. He greeted his mother, and she returned the greeting. The boy, Christian, casually interacted with Sally, who teased him. The boss intervened, reminding Sally to be kind, asserting that just because Christian was competition didn't mean she should insult him. Sally, surprised, questioned how he could be ahead of her in their rivalry. Christian teased Sally about her crush on Makoto, showing her a picture of him and Makoto together at a graduation party, leaning against each other with a smug expression. He jokingly suggested that if Makoto started liking boys soon, Sally would know why. In a fit of frustration, Sally lunged at Christian, tackling him to the ground and playfully hitting him. Christian laughed and managed to kick her off, responding with a light-hearted jab about her strength. Sally, determined to defend her honor, threatened Christian, but was quickly interrupted by a stern voice. It was Baroness Kingsley, who reminded Sally not to threaten her brother's life. After a moment of silence, Sally reluctantly acknowledged her mistake, and Kingsley ordered her to go to her room for the week, grounding her. Sally complied, sniffling as she left, while Kingsley and Christian exchanged glances. Christian, curious, asked his mother what she planned to do with Sally's belongings. Kingsley, with a playful tone, hinted at her intentions, which made Christian uneasy. He quickly changed the subject, confirming they were still on the lookout for a man who owed them a significant sum of money. As Christian left the room, Kingsley took a deep breath, her thoughts drifting to someone special. The next day, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was lost in dreams of becoming the HRM king when he was abruptly awakened by something sharp against his chin. Confused, he looked down to find a knife there, and 𝐻𝐮𝐬 emerged from under the covers, half-dressed, causing 𝐬𝐮𝐬 to blush. 𝐻𝐻𝐮𝐬 explained she had a nightmare, and 𝐬𝐮𝐬, still startled, asked why she had a knife. 𝐻𝐻𝐮𝐬 reassured him that she hoped she hadn't interrupted his dreams, and then suggested they could go out since it was summer. However, her intentions took a different turn as she playfully suggested they could stay in bed and have some fun. 𝐬𝐮𝐬, nervous about being caught, hesitated, but before he could protest further, a summoning circle lit up in the room, revealing Rias, who appeared in an outfit that made 𝐬𝐮𝐬's heart race. Rias greeted 𝐬𝐮𝐬, who was flustered and tried to cover his embarrassment as he jumped out of bed. Rias, noticing 𝐻𝐻𝐮𝐬, felt a surge of jealousy but masked it from 𝐬𝐮𝐬. She asked him to step outside for a moment, and he complied, trying to hide his awkwardness. Once he left, Rias confronted 𝐻𝐻𝐮𝐬, warning her to stay away from 𝐬𝐮𝐬, but 𝐻𝐻𝐮𝐬 playfully challenged her, suggesting they could share him. Rias, frustrated, insisted that 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was hers alone. 𝐻𝐻𝐮𝐬, unfazed, got dressed and vanished from the room, leaving Rias to breathe a sigh of relief. Soon after, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 returned, and 𝐬𝐬𝐻 hugged him, suggesting they go to the park. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 agreed, and as they left, his sister Alexandra called out, reminding him not to be gone too long. As they walked, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 asked 𝐬𝐬𝐻 about their plans after the park, and she excitedly listed activities, including a movie and lunch. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 couldn't help but think about 𝐬𝐬𝐻 in a swimsuit, while 𝐬𝐬𝐻 smiled, knowing 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was her adorable pervert. Just then, Asia appeared, tackling 𝐬𝐮𝐬 to the ground, and they exchanged cheerful greetings. As they chatted, 𝐬𝐬𝐻 watched, feeling a mix of emotions about the dynamic between them all. Asia looked over and saw 𝐬𝐬𝐻 glaring at her. Instead of feeling afraid, she smiled at 𝐬𝐬𝐻 and got up off 𝐬𝐮𝐬. Asia greeted 𝐬𝐬𝐻 warmly, expressing her surprise at almost forgetting to say hello. 𝐬𝐬𝐻 responded with a curt acknowledgement, mentioning that she and 𝐬𝐮𝐬 were heading to the park. Asia, not wanting to intrude, assured them she wouldn't take up much of their time. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 offered her the option to join them, but Asia politely declined, saying she had other things to attend to. After a brief farewell, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 walked over to 𝐬𝐬𝐻, and the two continued on their way, leaving Asia with a smile on her face. As Asia stood there, she thought about 𝐬𝐮𝐬, feeling a mix of affection and mischief. Suddenly, a stranger approached her, his demeanor unsettling. He asked what a pretty girl like her was doing alone and suggested she come with him. Asia felt a wave of disgust wash over her but tried to remain polite. The man led her into the woods, far enough from town to feel isolated. When he made a crude request, Asia's expression changed from confusion to determination. In a swift motion, she conjured a light blade and defended herself, leaving the man incapacitated. She expressed her disdain for his behavior, contrasting it with her feelings for 𝐬𝐮𝐬. As the man attempted to crawl away in fear, Asia made sure he wouldn't escape, dragging him deeper into the woods while humming a tune. She had a plan to make an example of him. Meanwhile, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 and 𝐬𝐬𝐻 were enjoying a pleasant day at the park, discussing the appealing weather. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 offered 𝐬𝐬𝐻 some ice cream, but she playfully suggested they go elsewhere. 𝐬𝐬𝐻 took his hand, leading him away with a mischievous smile. In a secluded alleyway, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 found himself caught off guard by 𝐬𝐬𝐻's boldness. As they shared an NTMT moment, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 felt a mix of excitement and anxiety about being discovered. 𝐬𝐬𝐻, fully engaged in the moment, was lost in her own desires. Afterward, they decided to find the ice cream truck together. Just as they were about to leave the alley, 𝐬𝐻 found herself trapped in a hidden domain. She attempted to use her powers to escape but quickly realized they were ineffective. Turning around, she faced a small girl with a fierce aura, who seemed ready for a fight. The girl, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, challenged 𝐬𝐬𝐻, and the tension escalated quickly. 𝐬𝐬𝐻, determined to defend herself, retaliated with her own attacks. The two engaged in a fierce battle, with 𝐬𝐬𝐻 trying to gain the upper hand. Despite her efforts, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 proved to be a formidable opponent, landing powerful strikes that left 𝐬𝐬𝐻 struggling to keep her footing. As the fight continued, 𝐬𝐬𝐻's frustration grew. She attempted to assert her authority, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 was relentless, countering her moves with agility and strength. The clash between them was intense, with both fighters displaying their skills. 𝐬𝐬𝐻, feeling the pressure, realized she was in over her head as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 landed a decisive blow, leaving her momentarily incapacitated. 𝐀𝐮𝐿� stood over 𝐬𝐬𝐻, contemplating her next move, the tension in the air thick with unresolved conflict. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 turned off the domain and walked out of the alleyway, leaving 𝐬𝐬𝐻 unconscious on the ground. As she heard 𝐬𝐮𝐬's location, she thought about spending the day with him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 entered the park and looked around, finally spotting him on a bench with two ice creams in his hands. The one in his left hand was melting, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 decided to take this opportunity. She approached him, and 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was surprised to see her there. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 playfully teased him about being a pervert, and he stumbled over his words, thinking she would be at the gym training. She replied that she was taking the day off, and when he offered her the melting ice cream, she eagerly accepted. As she devoured the ice cream in seconds, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 noted how hungry she seemed. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 pointed out that his hand was sticky from the ice cream, and without warning, she gripped his hand and began licking it clean. 𝐬𝐻 panicked, glancing around to ensure no one misunderstood the situation. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨, unfazed, continued liking, enjoying the moment while teasing him about his blush. Suddenly, a camera flash caught their attention. They turned to see a stranger hiding under the slide, taking pictures of them. Kaneko, fueled by irritation, dashed after the intruder, leaving 𝐬𝐮𝐬 stunned by her speed. He wondered where Rias might be, contemplating if something had come up. Meanwhile, the stranger reveled in his captured photo, thinking it would cause a stir among his friends. Kaneko caught up to him and swiftly knocked the air out of him with a punch, demanding to see the photo. As he wheezed, he reluctantly handed it over, and Kaneko examined it, nodding in approval. However, before he could speak further, she delivered a decisive blow, leaving him incapacitated. With her task complete, Kaneko returned to the park, pondering what to do with 𝐬𝐮𝐬. She considered going to the movies or grabbing something to eat. When she arrived back at the park, she noticed 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was gone, and a strand of shiny blonde hair on the bench fueled her frustration. Meanwhile, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was being dragged away by two girls he knew, one a friend, the other eager for his attention. They were on their way to a karaoke place, and while 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was surprised by their enthusiasm, he went along with it. Once inside, they ordered a VIP karaoke room and began singing, with 𝐬𝐮𝐬 getting a bit tipsy. As the girls watched him, they exchanged playful banter about his state. One of them, Zenobia, pulled out some supplies, suggesting they could continue their fun later. Irina insisted that 𝐬𝐮𝐬 needed to remember every moment, but they were unsure how to proceed when they found him asleep on the floor. Disappointed but determined not to waste their time, they decided to enjoy the karaoke machine and drink as much as possible. Then, Akino entered the room, surprised to find the two girls in a drunken embrace. She had previously arranged for their drinks to be spiked, and with a mischievous smile, she picked up the sleeping 𝐬𝐮𝐬 and left the room. As Akino was about to exit the building, the front desk attendant stopped her, expecting a reward for his assistance. Akino, recalling her promise, prepared to comply, but instead, she used her powers to create a distraction, shocking him and leaving him incapacitated. With a satisfied smirk, she walked out, leaving the chaos behind. Akino approached 𝐬𝐮𝐬's house with a smile on her face, thinking about how soon it would be just her and her sweet 𝐬𝐮𝐬. She quickened her pace, glancing over her shoulder to ensure that the other girls wouldn't come out and interrupt her plans. After a brisk walk of 20 minutes, Akino arrived at the house, opened the front door, and made her way upstairs. She gently placed 𝐬𝐮𝐬 on his bed and climbed on top of him, her eyes sparkling with affection. Finally, it was just the two of them. Akino leaned down and kissed 𝐬𝐮𝐬 softly on the cheek and neck, feeling a rush of warmth as she began to remove his shirt. She continued to express her feelings for him, lost in the moment. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, but Akino chose to ignore it, focusing instead on her sweet 𝐬𝐮𝐬. The doorbell rang repeatedly, growing more insistent, which began to frustrate her. After a moment of agitation, Akino decided to get dressed and head downstairs, her annoyance simmering. As she reached the door, she took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm and just answer whatever questions were posed. When she opened the door, she was surprised to see Tatsumi standing there. Tatsumi greeted her with a friendly, "Oh, hi." Akino responded with a simple, "Hello, what brings you to my house?" Akino confirmed that it was indeed her house, while Tatsumi expressed confusion, thinking it belonged to 𝐬𝐮𝐬. Akino acknowledged her connection to 𝐬𝐮𝐬, and Tatsumi revealed he was a friend of his. Akino's demeanor shifted slightly, hinting at a different thought crossing her mind. Tatsumi then inquired about 𝐬𝐮𝐬's whereabouts, but Akino claimed she didn't know. As she prepared to close the door, Tatsumi quickly placed his foot in the way. Akino noticed this and a mischievous smile appeared on her face, accompanied by a hint of a dark aura. She asked if something was wrong, and Tatsumi pressed her about the family photo behind her, which depicted 𝐬𝐮𝐬's family. Tatsumi's grip on his sword holster tightened as he glared at Akino, demanding to know who she was and where his friend was. Akino remained silent, and Tatsumi continued to question her. Suddenly, Akino snapped her fingers, sending a jolt of electricity through Tatsumi, rendering him unconscious as he collapsed to the ground. With a satisfied smile, Akino closed the door and headed back upstairs, reflecting on how fortunate Tatsumi was to be 𝐬𝐮𝐬's friend, but warning herself to be less merciful next time. Just as she reached the stairs, the doorbell rang again, catching her off guard. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 wondered if there was a witness to the earlier events and decided to investigate. She opened the door, only to be unexpectedly attacked. A figure lunged at her, stabbing her with a pair of scissors. Shocked, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 felt the pain as the figure continued to strike, inflicting injuries to her shoulder, thigh, and neck before pushing her against the wall. The figure expressed anger over 𝗧𝗠𝐴's predicament, revealing a deep obsession. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 realized she was facing a dangerous opponent. The figure declared that 𝐻𝐻𝐿's demise would be slow and painful. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 attempted to respond defiantly, but before she could finish, the figure made a decisive move, causing her to struggle for breath. The figure taunted her, saying that 𝗧𝗠𝐴 would not be able to save her, as he would remain unconscious. As the figure prepared to leave with 𝗧𝗠𝐴, 𝐻𝐻𝐿, despite her injuries, summoned her remaining strength, determined to fight back. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 jolted awake after being unconscious for the past 45 minutes. He looked around, confused to find himself in a room that wasn't his. His mind raced with questions about where he was, whose house it was, and where his phone was. Just then, the door opened, and he saw a girl he knew well. 𝐻𝐿 expressed relief that 𝗧𝗠𝐴 was awake. He recognized her and asked if this was her room. She confirmed it, acknowledging its simplicity. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 inquired how he ended up there, and 𝐻𝐿 explained that she had found him lying unconscious and took him in. Grateful, 𝗧𝗠𝐴 thanked her as she pulled his phone from her pocket, surprising him. 𝐻𝐿 mentioned she was keeping it safe. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 checked the time and was shocked to see it was 9 p.m. He moved the curtains aside to find it was dark outside. Realizing he had been sleeping for a while, he felt a rush of urgency to get home, fearing his parents would be upset. 𝐻𝐿 suggested he call them and ask if he could stay the night. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 paused, looking at her with admiration, and then hugged her, making her feel a shiver of delight. He decided to call his mom, and after a few rings, she picked up, immediately worried. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 reassured her that he was fine and at a friend's house, asking if he could stay the night. When she realized it was a girl, she hesitated, but 𝗧𝗠𝐴 insisted. His father's voice erupted on the line, scolding him for being late. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 listened to his dad's angry tirade for several minutes before he finally calmed down and agreed that 𝗧𝗠𝐴 could stay at 𝐻𝐿's house. After saying his goodbyes, he hung up. 𝐻𝐿 was pleased to hear that 𝗧𝗠𝐴 could stay. She mentioned that his dad seemed a bit intense. 𝗧𝗠𝐴, slightly embarrassed, explained that his dad had anger issues but was generally a nice guy. 𝐻𝐿 nodded, still skeptical. 𝗧𝗠𝐴 then asked what they could do, and 𝐻𝐿 suggested watching a movie. He agreed and followed her downstairs to the living room. As they descended, 𝗧𝗠𝐴 admired her home, complimenting its charm. He asked if she had informed her parents about him being there, which prompted a flashback. In the memory, a young 𝗀𝐿 was being scolded by her parents after an incident at school. They forbade her from seeing 𝗧𝗠𝐴, expressing their disappointment in her behavior. They informed her that she would be switching schools due to her declining grades, which left her feeling frustrated and determined not to let them separate her from 𝗧𝗠𝐴. Back in the present, 𝗀𝐿 was lost in thought about her parents' words, feeling a surge of defiance. As night fell, she devised a plan to ensure she could stay close to 𝗧𝗠𝐴. She waited until her parents were asleep and then pretended to have a nightmare, asking her mother to check her room. When her mother entered, 𝗀𝐿 cleverly manipulated the situation, leading her to check under the bed. In a sudden turn, 𝗀𝐿 took drastic action, ensuring her mother wouldn't interfere again. She then moved to her father, feigning innocence and concern. When he went to investigate, she struck, causing him to fall and injure himself. Satisfied, 𝗀𝐿 walked away, feeling a sense of liberation. Returning to the present, 𝗧𝗠𝐴 and 𝗀𝐿 settled in for a movie, unaware of the dark thoughts swirling in 𝗀𝐿's mind. The night stretched on, filled with the warmth of companionship, but shadows lingered just beneath the surface. 𝗀𝐿 watched in shock as a bowling ball rolled toward her father. The moment it struck him, his body went limp. 𝗀𝐿 sat on the first step, tears streaming down her face, but soon her sorrow turned to giggles, and then to full-blown laughter. 𝗀𝐿 felt a sense of freedom wash over her, believing she could now keep 𝗧𝗠𝐴 safe from any other girl trying to get close to him. Tatsumi, unaware of the past that haunted 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵, asked if her parents had left her alone. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 confirmed that they had given her the keys to the house and disappeared, and she hadn't heard from them in years. Tatsumi expressed his sympathy, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 reassured him that she felt free and believed her parents were okay wherever they were. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 then suggested they watch a movie together. As she put the disc into the DVD player, Tatsumi sat beside her, leaning against her shoulder. They enjoyed the film in comfortable silence until 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 broke it, commenting on how nice it was. Tatsumi agreed, trying to stay calm. As the movie played, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 slowly moved her hand onto Tatsumi's leg, noticing his blush. She took her time, inching closer until she felt the tension in the air. Just as they were about to share a moment, the doorbell rang, interrupting them. Tatsumi got up to answer the door and found a 𝐶𝐮𝐬𝐵 man waiting with a pizza that had been ordered by his mother. After closing the door, Tatsumi returned to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 with the pizza, which she found delightful. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 decided to put on another movie, but as she did, a loud thud startled her. She turned to see Tatsumi slumped on the floor, and panic set in. She rushed over, moving the coffee table aside, and called out to him, desperate for him to wake up. The pizza man reappeared, leaning against the doorframe, assuring her that Tatsumi was just sleeping. But 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵, sensing something was off, pulled out her giant scissors and confronted him. In a swift motion, she attempted to strike, but he dodged and retaliated, knocking her to the ground. She managed to throw him into the kitchen wall and stood her ground. The pizza man revealed his true identity, transforming into 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐵, who confronted 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 about Tatsumi. Just then, 𝐿eon appeared, having been injured in the scuffle. The tension escalated as 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐵 and 𝐿eon argued over Tatsumi, but they were interrupted by the arrival of 𝐒𝐻𝐻, who exuded a menacing aura. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 declared that none of them would leave the house alive, and the girls exchanged determined glances, ready to fight. Just then, Tatsumi began sleep-talking, wishing for a girlfriend. This moment of vulnerability prompted 𝐀𝐻𝐻 to suggest they focus on getting Tatsumi to safety first. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 agreed to carry him upstairs, placing him gently in 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵's parents' bed before leaving. As 𝐒𝐻𝐻 returned downstairs, she smirked at the three girls, snapping her fingers and causing an icy explosion that sent them flying. They quickly recovered and landed on the same building, realizing they needed to work together to take down 𝐒𝐻𝐻. 𝐿eon proposed a truce, and the girls agreed, preparing to face their formidable opponent. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 taunted them, claiming victory was already hers. 𝐿eon, ready for a fight, cracked her knuckles, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 readied her scissors and 𝐀𝐻𝐻 armed herself with a shotgun. The battle began with 𝐒𝐻𝐻 charging at them, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 met her head-on. Their blades clashed in a fierce struggle, but 𝐿eon jumped in to assist. 𝐀𝐻𝐻 fired her shotgun, momentarily pushing 𝐒𝐻𝐻 back. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 acknowledged their teamwork but retaliated by turning the building into ice, creating chaos as residents fled. The stakes were high, and the girls knew they had to work together if they wanted to stand a chance against 𝐒𝐻𝐻. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 stood atop a frozen building, observing as the icy husk battled the three girls, scattering them apart. 𝐿eon and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵 handled the situation with ease, but 𝐀𝐻𝐻 struggled to maintain her distance, only for the ice husk to close in on her in an instant. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 thought to herself that no matter how strong or fast they were, they would all eventually fall. With a lack of interest in the unfolding chaos, she decided to leave, heading back to Tatsumi's house. 𝐿eon noticed 𝐒𝐻𝐻's departure and quickly pursued her. She called out to 𝐒𝐻𝐻, demanding to know where she thought she was going. When 𝐿eon reached 𝐒𝐻𝐻, she threw a punch, but 𝐒𝐻𝐻 effortlessly blocked it with her blade, pushing 𝐿eon back. As 𝐿eon checked her knuckles, she noticed the cuts from striking the blade and clicked her tongue in frustration. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 dismissed her, stating she had no reason to waste her time on someone so weak. 𝐿eon, determined to prove her strength, charged at 𝐒𝐻𝐻, who remained expressionless. With a swift kick to 𝐿eon's gut, 𝐒𝐻𝐻 sent her flying into a nearby building. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 then stabbed her blade into the ground, causing ice to spread across the road, leading to cars sliding and crashing into one another. From the ice, an ice golem emerged, ready to follow 𝐒𝐻𝐻's command to eliminate 𝐿eon. With a small smile, 𝐒𝐻𝐻 returned to Tatsumi's house, but her senses tingled as she deflected a pair of scissors thrown by 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐵. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 blocked and deflected the projectiles, leaping towards 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who managed to block her attack. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 questioned why 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 resisted death, to which 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 replied that as long as there were people like 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 trying to take what was hers, she would not succumb. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 acknowledged this with a nod before delivering a punch to 𝐒𝐮𝐴's face, sending her crashing into a random building. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 continued her journey to 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡's house, eager for some time alone with him. Upon arriving, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 slowed her pace and walked upstairs, only to find 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡's head resting on another woman's lap. Anger surged within 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. She confronted 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who looked up and suggested she could leave, as she was attending to 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡. Before 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 could finish, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 launched an ice spear at her, forcing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to dodge. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 then charged, grabbing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 by the throat and throwing her out the window. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 landed safely and turned to see 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 already in motion, swinging her blade. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 ducked just in time, causing the trees behind her to be sliced. Drawing her own blade, 𝐀𝐮𝐴 aimed for 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴's legs, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 leaped and delivered a spinning kick to 𝐀𝐮𝐴's face, sending her sliding back. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 demanded to know what 𝐀𝐮𝐴 was doing with her husband, to which 𝐀𝐮𝐴 declared that 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡 belonged to her and that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 could not have him. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 charged at 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, swinging her blade, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 blocked and countered, stabbing her blade into the ground to spread ice once more. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 leaped over the ice and threw her blade at 𝐒𝐮𝐴, who dodged effortlessly. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 thought to herself that 𝐾𝐮𝐴 was now unarmed, but 𝐾𝐮𝐴 surprised her with a punch to the face, sending 𝐒𝐮𝐴 sliding back. Touching her cheek, 𝐒𝐮𝐴 glared at 𝐾𝐮𝐴, vowing that she would pay for that. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 stabbed her blade into the ground, expecting another ice spread, but instead, she blitzed towards 𝐾𝐮𝐴, delivering a powerful punch to her gut, sending her rolling across the ground. 𝐾𝐮𝐴 quickly regained her footing, only to find 𝐒𝐮𝐴 right in front of her, fist drawn back for another strike. 𝐾𝐮𝐴 dodged just in time and retaliated with a spin kick, which 𝐒𝐮𝐴 absorbed before grabbing 𝐾𝐮𝐴 by the leg and slamming her into the ground repeatedly. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 mocked 𝐾𝐮𝐴, declaring her pathetic as she slammed her into the earth, sending her bouncing into the air. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 kicked 𝐾𝐮𝐴 further into the forest, confident that she had finished her off. As 𝐒𝐮𝐴 reached for her blade, 𝐾𝐮𝐴 dashed past her, surprising 𝐒𝐮𝐴 by snatching it away. 𝐾𝐮𝐴 spun around and charged at 𝐒𝐮𝐴, who dodged and grabbed 𝐾𝐮𝐴's blade. The two engaged in a fierce exchange, their blades clashing and sending shockwaves through the forest, uprooting trees and creating a sudden chill in the air. They slid back, then rushed each other again, their skills evenly matched. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 declared that 𝐾𝐮𝐴 would die, while 𝐾𝐮𝐴 vowed to take 𝐒𝐮𝐴 down before she could reach 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 shot an ice spike at 𝐾𝐮𝐴, who ducked and charged at her, swinging her blade at 𝗧𝗜𝐃's legs. 𝗧𝗜𝐴 blocked the attack and attempted a spin kick, but 𝐾𝐮𝐴 jumped back. They glared at each other, realizing they were wielding each other's blades. 𝐾𝐮𝐴 complimented 𝗧𝗜𝐴's weapon, and 𝗧𝗜𝐴 returned the sentiment, suggesting a trade. They tossed their swords back to each other and rushed forward once more, but before they could clash, a figure crashed between them, sending them sliding back. As the smoke cleared, both girls were shocked to see 𝐻𝗫𝐴 standing before them. She greeted them and noted that they seemed to be having quite the time. 𝐾𝐮𝐴 asked why 𝗻𝗫𝗫 was there, while 𝗧𝗜𝐴 questioned if she intended to take 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡 from her. 𝗻𝗫𝗫 assured them both that she was not there for 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗡, revealing that she had her sights set on someone else. She pulled out a picture of Izuku, shirtless at the gym, blushing before putting it back in her pocket. 𝗻𝗫𝗫 then informed the two that she was there to help them avoid trouble with the police, along with the other girls. 𝗧𝗜𝗃 suggested she could simply eliminate the officers, but 𝗻𝗫𝗫 pointed out the negative publicity that would bring. 𝗻𝗫𝗫 expressed disappointment in 𝐾𝐮𝐴 and the others for their actions, acknowledging the difficulty of keeping loved ones safe from danger. 𝗀𝐻𝐮𝐴 realized that 𝗻𝗫𝗫 understood her struggle. 𝗻𝗫𝗫 urged them to leave before the area was swarmed with law enforcement, having already helped the others escape. 𝗻𝗫𝗫 instructed the others to settle their differences later, suggesting they could do so deep in the forest if they were so eager to confront each other. As she walked away, the sound of multiple police sirens approached in the distance. 𝗻𝗫𝗫 glanced back at the two with a serious expression, warning them not to let this happen again. She then dashed into the forest, leaving the two behind as the sirens grew louder. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿 sheathed her blade and, despite her longing to see her opponent defeated, proposed they call it a draw for now. 𝐻𝐿 agreed, and the two girls parted ways. Meanwhile, Tatsumi was waking up after being unconscious for some time. He groaned, confused about what had happened, and called out for 𝐒𝐿. As he looked around, he noticed the broken window, which shocked him, especially since it was so cold. He got out of bed and left the room, only to be stunned by the sight of a giant iceberg in the house. In disbelief, he exclaimed about the situation and called for 𝐒𝐿. Before he could search for her, the sound of police sirens reached his ears, causing him to panic. Confused, he ran back into the 𝐴𝐵 bedroom, jumped out of the window, and fled into the woods. As he ran through the forest, Tatsumi eventually reached another neighborhood and sat on a bench, sighing heavily. He realized he needed to get home. Standing up, he checked his pockets and felt his phone. Deciding to call the group chat, he waited a few seconds until someone answered. 𝐀𝐿 greeted him, asking how he was doing. Tatsumi expressed his confusion, explaining that he didn't remember anything after eating pizza with 𝐒𝐿. Issei teased him about missing an opportunity, while Katsuki suggested he might have been drugged. Tatsumi dismissed the idea, incredulous that the pizza DLVY person would do such a thing. 𝐀𝐿 speculated about a possible grudge against Tatsumi, but Izuku quickly shut that down. Frustrated, Tatsumi ended the call, feeling a smile return to his face as he found comfort in his friend's antics. Meanwhile, at the Yagi household, Izumi lay in bed with her phone in hand, appreciating the sound of her friends' voices. She turned off her phone and closed her eyes, but soon heard Izuku's door open. Curious, she got up and opened her door, seeing him heading downstairs. He casually mentioned he was just going to make a snack, and she wished him good night before returning to her room. Izuku made his way to the kitchen, turned on the lights, and opened the refrigerator, contemplating what to make. As he gathered ingredients for a sandwich, his phone buzzed on the counter, catching his attention. He hesitated, wondering who was calling from a random number, but decided to let it ring. After finishing his sandwich preparations, the phone rang again. Annoyed, he hung up and blocked the caller, focusing on making his meal. Once he completed his sandwich, he sat down to enjoy it in peace, but the phone buzzed once more, interrupting his meal. Irritated, he glanced at the screen and saw the same number again. He answered, asking who was on the line. The voice on the other end asked about his favorite scary movie, but Izuku was confused and didn't understand the reference. The caller insisted he answer, revealing they were in his backyard. Izuku, unfazed, simply hung up, leaving the caller bewildered. "That's it," one of them thought. Another replied that it was all he had said, finding it strange. One of the figures expressed concern, wondering if he might come outside. The response was dismissive, insisting there was no way that would happen. Suddenly, the sound of the back door opening echoed through the air, causing the three figures to turn and look at the house's interior, but there was no one standing in the doorway. One of them asked where he was, while another reassured that it was probably just the wind. However, the night was still, and the unease lingered. Just then, one of the figures' phones rang, startling them as they picked it up to see who was calling. The figure called their phone, glancing at the other two who shook their heads in disapproval. Ignoring their hesitation, the figure decided to answer. A voice came through, identifying itself as Izuku, who noted he could see them by the large oak tree over the fence and urged them to run. The three figures, startled, dashed into the forest. Meanwhile, Izuku in his room stretched and got into a running stance before sprinting down the stairs, out the back door, and leaping over the fence to pursue them. As he ran, his moon god and brutish nature quirks merged, transforming him with wolf-like features. Izuku leaped onto the side of a tree, bounding from branch to branch until he spotted the three figures. He declared he had them in his sights and lunged at one of them. The figure turned just in time to be tackled to the ground by Izuku, who now sported wolf ears and sharp claws, leaving the figure in shock. The figure stammered Izuku's name, and Izuku demanded to know how they knew him. Suddenly, another figure shouted for help, prompting Izuku to leap off the first figure, narrowly dodging an attempt to grab him. He landed and confronted the trio, all clad in black robes and wearing identical masks. Izuku questioned their intentions, and one figure insisted they only wanted to talk. Another figure attempted to defuse the situation, but Izuku, feeling threatened, lunged at one of them. The figure dodged, stumbling back as Izuku advanced toward the cowering figure. Just then, another figure caught him in a headlock, but Izuku quickly elbowed them away and threw them to the ground. The last figure brandished a knife, rushing at Izuku, who instinctively swung his fist, knocking the weapon from their hand. Seizing the figure by the neck, he lifted them off the ground, demanding to know who they were. The figures stammered, revealing themselves as Gabi, which shocked Izuku. He dropped her, and she took a deep breath, trying to calm him. Gabi explained she had gotten better since her time in the mental hospital. Izuku, confused, asked what she was doing there when he was suddenly attacked again. He swung his arm, knocking another figure down, discovering a syringe that had been used on him. As he fell unconscious, Gabi caught him and cradled his head in her lap, reassuring him that they would help him. One of the figures remarked that the situation had turned disastrous, while Gabi noted it could have been worse. Another figure, Jenny, expressed disappointment that they had been outsmarted. They decided to leave quickly, not wanting to attract attention. Gabi picked up Izuku and, along with the others, fled into the woods, seeking a safe place for all of them. The next day, Izuku slowly woke up, groggy and disoriented, greeted by a strange smell. As he opened his eyes, he realized he was in a dusty old basement, his hands and feet chained to the wall. He called out for help, desperate for someone to hear him. The basement door creaked open, and one of the figures from the previous day entered, carrying a plate of food in one hand and a knife in the other, which startled Izuku. The figure approached, warning him not to move, or he would spill his breakfast. Reluctantly, Izuku complied as the figure placed the tray on his lap and set the knife aside. They spoon-fed him eggs, gently guiding him to eat. After a few bites, the figure offered him orange juice, encouraging him to drink. Izuku learned the figure's name was Kanata, who explained that they couldn't let him go home because it would upset her friend, who was the only one interested in him. Izuku pleaded to go home, but Kanata firmly stated he wouldn't be leaving anytime soon, as escaping would lead to trouble. She insisted he finish his breakfast while Izuku's mind raced, trying to piece together how he ended up in this predicament. He thought about his family and friends, who were surely searching for him. Meanwhile, his parents, along with a team of heroes and friends, were actively looking for Izuku. Ayano, Lucy, Kaguya, Rainier, Chika and her sisters, Rose, Monica, and Kotonoha were all on the hunt, each feeling the weight of worry and fear for Izuku's safety. They were determined to find him, each grappling with their emotions and the urgency of the situation. Back in the basement, Izuku continued to receive gentle head pats from Kanata as he finished his meal, his thoughts racing with concern for his future and the mystery of his captors. Breakfast was finished, and Kanata had eaten everything. She announced that she was going to leave. Izuku, feeling desperate, called out to her, urging her to understand that he didn't belong there and wanted to go home. He pleaded for her to talk to her friend and let him go. Kanata simply shrugged off his request and walked out of the basement, leaving Izuku alone. He began searching for a way to escape and noticed that she had left a kitchen knife behind. He reached out for it, but the chains binding him prevented him from getting close enough. Frustration built within him as he realized the knife was just out of reach. In a moment of determination, he tried to use his foot to grab the knife, but just then he heard footsteps approaching. He quickly stopped and feigned normalcy as Kanata returned, carrying a record player and a collection of discs. She set up the record player and started playing a song, filling the room with music. Kanata walked over to Izuku, wrapping a kitchen cloth around his mouth and tying it securely so he wouldn't yell constantly. She gave him a gentle pat on the head before leaving the basement. Just as she was about to exit, she turned back and grabbed a knife, almost forgetting it. Izuku spent the rest of the day in the basement while Kanata came back and forth to check on him, spoon-feeding him lunch and dinner, and fulfilling any other requests he had, except for letting him go. The next day, Izuku was doing his best to sleep when the basement door opened. Another figure descended the stairs, crouching down to grab Izuku by the chin and examine him. The figure introduced herself as Himiko Toga, stating that she would be his nurse for the day. Izuku was confused and asked if she could let him go. Toga laughed, saying that this was his new home and that no one was coming to rescue him. She suggested they play tic-tac-toe, but Izuku was adamant that he wanted to leave. Toga insisted that they could keep him there, and when Izuku raised his voice, she slapped him to silence him, threatening that things could get rough if he didn't comply. After calming down, Toga left the basement to find the game box. Izuku took the opportunity to look for a way to escape. He noticed a window above him but found it locked. He attempted to pull off the chains but realized his quirk was weakened, rendering him unable to break free. Determined to return to his friends and family, he searched for anything that could help him. When Toga returned with the game box, Izuku feigned normalcy. They played tic-tac-toe, and to Toga's surprise, Izuku won repeatedly. She expressed her confusion over his skill, and he attributed it to luck and her predictability. Frustrated, Toga decided to find another game and came back with Candyland. As she set up the game, Izuku sighed, realizing she had no intention of letting him go. When he tried to protest, Toga attempted to slap him again, but he caught her arm and pulled her closer, putting her in a hold. She struggled, but he was determined to escape, fearing what she might do if he let her go. In a desperate moment, Toga pulled out a knife and stabbed Izuku in the leg. He instinctively bit her shoulder to stifle a scream. They both froze, realizing the unexpected reaction between them. Seizing the moment, Izuku smashed Toga's face into the wall, knocking her out. He quickly checked her pockets and found some keys. With newfound hope, he unlocked his cuffs and freed himself. Now determined to escape, he approached the basement door, opened it, and stepped into an empty room with another door on the left. He moved towards it, ready to find his way out. Izuku screamed in pain as he fell to the ground, staring at the bear trap clamped around his foot. The sound of hurried footsteps approached, and Jenny and Kotana turned the corner, their expressions shifting to concern as they saw Izuku writhing in agony. Kotana rushed to his side, trying to soothe him while Jenny focused on unlocking the trap. Jenny questioned how he had even gotten into this situation, but Kotana urged her to concentrate on freeing him. She spoke gently to Izuku, encouraging him to look at her and calm down. Izuku expressed his distress, and Kotana reassured him that the trap would be off soon. With a final click, Jenny managed to unlock the bear trap, allowing Izuku to begin calming down. However, while he was distracted, Kotana discreetly injected him with a sedative, rendering him unconscious. As the two girls carefully lifted Izuku, they made their way back to the basement, ensuring they were gentle with his injured leg. Izuku remained unconscious for several days while the girls tended to his injury, uncertain of their abilities. After 5 days, he finally regained consciousness, recognizing the familiar surroundings of the basement. As the door creaked open, Izuku looked up to see Gabi enter, holding a bowl. She gasped in surprise upon seeing him awake and rushed to embrace him, tears of joy and sorrow streaming down her face. Gabi apologized profusely for his injury, and Izuku began to question what was wrong with his leg. Suddenly, memories flooded back to him, and he realized that Gabi was the one who had kidnapped him. Gabi acknowledged his accusation but urged him to listen to her reasoning. She confessed her love for him, revealing that she had been in love with him since 8th grade. Izuku was taken aback, recalling that this was the same time Gabi had faced serious legal trouble. Gabi dismissed the past, insisting that she had prepared breakfast for him. She offered him a bowl of sliced fruits, but when Izuku attempted to refuse, she forcefully fed him, determined not to let him leave her again. In a moment of desperation, Gabi gripped Izuku's neck, demanding to know if he loved her. Despite his struggles, he managed to respond that he liked her. Gabi was momentarily taken aback, and a mix of emotions crossed her face. As she processed his words, her demeanor shifted dramatically, and she erupted in laughter, expressing her joy that he liked her. However, when Izuku hesitantly tried to address her, Gabi's mood turned dark. In a fit of rage, she threw the bowl against the wall, causing a mess in the basement as she questioned why he didn't love her. While she was distracted, Izuku spotted a phone on the floor. He stretched out his foot, managing to grab it and hide it just as Gabi finished her outburst. Gabby announced that she was going to get something to eat and left the basement. As soon as the door closed, Izuku turned on the phone, noticing it had only 10% battery left. He realized it was just enough to make a call. Meanwhile, at the Yagi household, Inko was distraught, comforted by Mitsuki and Rei. The Todoroki and Bakuga families, along with Detective 𝐻𝐿𝐼, were present, discussing their search efforts. 𝐻𝐿𝐼 expressed frustration at the lack of leads, while Inko lamented the absence of her son. The tension in the room was palpable as they all worried for Izuku's safety. Suddenly, 𝐻𝐿𝐼's phone rang, and he stepped away to answer. When he heard Izuku's name on the line, relief washed over the room. 𝐻𝐿𝐼 quickly gathered information, assuring Izuku that they were on their way to find him. As Izuku urged them to hurry, he was interrupted by Toga, who had entered the basement. In a swift motion, Toga punched Izuku in the gut, knocking the phone from his hand. She brandished a knife, demanding to know whom he had called. Just as the call ended, Toga realized the phone's battery was critically low, and she dashed out of the basement to alert the others. Izuku slumped to the ground, a sigh of relief escaping him as he thought about the possibility of finally going home. Izuku heard Monika's laughter, which confused him as he looked back at his phone, now at 1% battery. He wondered if he was losing his mind. Meanwhile, Monika sat in a room filled with cameras and electronics, staring at the main screen displaying Izuku's location. She thought to herself that he wasn't going crazy. As long as there were devices around him, she would always be with him. Monika spun her chair and rolled over to a microphone connected to various devices. After pressing a button and clearing her throat, she addressed Izuku's admirers. The girls, surprised by the sudden voice, began to react. Monika instructed them to check their phones, and they saw a green dot indicating Izuku's location. Monika announced that they had found him, and without hesitation, all of Izuku's devoted followers rushed to his location. Monika removed her finger from the button, stood up, and retrieved an AR-15 rifle from a locker, declaring that the hunt was on. Meanwhile, Toga dashed through the hallway, anxious to inform the others about the situation. She reached the living room, where Kanata and Jenny were seated, while Gabby was in the kitchen enjoying ramen. Toga urged them to pack their things quickly, revealing that Izuku had called the police on them and they needed to leave. The others were shocked, especially Gabby, who was questioned about her phone. When she checked her pockets and realized it was missing, panic set in. Toga and Jenny took off, followed by Gabby, who had a different plan in mind. She intended to find Izuku. Gabby hurried to the empty room where Izuku was kept, only to find the window open. She rushed to the window, fearing that Izuku had escaped. Frustrated, she cried out for him, expressing her longing to love him. Suddenly, Izuku's voice interrupted her thoughts, and before she knew it, he had her in a chokehold, covering her mouth. Despite her struggles, Gabby couldn't break free, and after a brief struggle, she passed out. Izuku laid her gently on the ground, feeling remorseful but knowing she needed help. He then made his way upstairs, checking the hallway for any traps. Spotting the front door, he sprinted toward it, but Jenny appeared, blocking his path. She lunged at him, trying to prevent his escape. In the scuffle, Izuku managed to throw Jenny aside, but just as he was about to break down the door, chains wrapped around his arm, pulling him back. Kanata had caught him, and Toga charged at him with a weapon. Izuku dodged her attack and retaliated, sending her crashing into the kitchen counter. As he struggled against the chains, Izuku pulled Kanata closer and managed to overpower her, slamming her into the ground. He freed himself just as the door exploded from the force of his punch, sending him tumbling down the hallway. Dazed, he looked up to find Rainier and Lucy in a fierce confrontation. Rainier, startled by Izuku's presence, expressed concern for his injured leg. Confused and overwhelmed, Izuku asked what was happening. Just then, Rose appeared, demanding to know where Izuku was being kept. As tensions rose, Rose charged at Rainier, who defended herself with her spear. Before they could clash, 𝐻𝐿𝐼 burst through the chaos, surprising Izuku as she lifted him and leaped through the hole in the ceiling, escaping to the rooftops. Izuku, still bewildered, recognized 𝐻𝐿𝐼 and expressed his confusion. She reassured him that she would take him to the hospital for his leg. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, and 𝐻𝐿𝐴 quickly ducked, narrowly avoiding the bullet. She sprinted for cover with Izuku in her arms, while 𝐾𝐲, positioned with a sniper rifle, struggled to keep her aim steady, knowing Izuku was in the line of fire. In her arms, the moment 𝐻𝐿𝐴 emerged, she took her shot, only for 𝐻𝐿𝐴 to quickly retreat into cover. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 thought to herself that it had been a close call, feeling frustrated by the obstacle in her way. Izuku was bewildered by the chaos unfolding around him. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 glanced over just in time to narrowly avoid a throwing knife aimed at her face. She spotted Ayano descending from above, wielding a hatchet, but managed to roll out of the way just in time. 𝐾𝐲, noticing the commotion, fired again, prompting 𝐻𝐿𝐴 to throw Izuku into the air and block the bullet with her metal arm. Ayano caught Izuku as she landed and quickly dashed away, leaving 𝐾𝐲 and 𝐻𝐿𝐴 exasperated. Ayano urged Izuku to hold on, promising to get him to safety, but before she could finish, Rainier and Lucy appeared. Rainier hurled a light spear while Lucy manipulated shadows, ensnaring Ayano in place as she held Izuku tightly. Ayano declared that they would face their fate together, leaving Izuku in shock. Rainier swiftly intervened, grabbing the light spear just inches away from them, sighing in relief. However, Ayano swung her hatchet, only for Rainier to effortlessly slice it in half. The rest of the girls arrived on the rooftop, exchanging fierce glares, particularly directed at Ayano since she had Izuku in her grasp. The tension hung in the air until Monica decided to break the silence, demanding Ayano to hand over her husband. Izuku was taken aback by the revelation. Lucy, equally surprised, questioned the claim. Izuku found himself at the center of a chaotic scene, surrounded by a group of determined girls, each claiming their love for him. Rose declared her intentions to marry him, while Chika and her sisters insisted they would be the ones to win his heart. 𝐾𝐲 joined in, and 𝐻𝐿𝐴 scoffed at the idea, suggesting that Izuku wouldn't want any of them. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 retorted with a sharp comment, and Ayano, feeling confident, proclaimed her love for Izuku, claiming she would have a bright future with him while the others would fade away. Izuku, overwhelmed by the situation, wondered what was happening. As tensions rose, the girls began to draw their weapons, ready to fight for Izuku's affection. Just then, a new figure appeared, catching Ayano's attention. This figure threw a knife at Izuku, but Ayano caught it midair, looking up to see the newcomer land gracefully on the roof. The figure, with a playful smile, called out to Izuku, reminding him of their past encounter. Izuku recognized Himiko Toga, who excitedly explained that after their last meeting, she had come to realize just how strong he was and that strong boys had the best BLD. She declared her longing for him, disregarding any competition. Toga swung a hook and chain at Izuku, but Ayano quickly intervened, parrying the attack. Toga smirked, noting that she wasn't the only one dangerously in love with Izuku. Ayano, exasperated, shouted her feelings for Izuku, and to her surprise, the others echoed her sentiments. Izuku was taken aback by the sudden declaration of love from all the girls. With a fierce determination, they all charged at one another, weapons drawn, ready to prove their devotion. The scene unfolded with chaos as Lucy and Ayano clashed, both determined to take the other down. Lucy swung her scythes, managing to wound Ayano, who retaliated with her own attack. Meanwhile, Rose and 𝐾𝐮𝐿𝐴 engaged in a fierce battle, using smoke bombs and blades to gain the upper hand. Their struggle left both girls injured but unwilling to back down. Rainier faced off against 𝐻𝐿𝐴, struggling to land a hit, which only fueled her frustration. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 seized the moment, delivering a powerful jab that sent Rainier reeling. As the battles continued, Toga found herself outnumbered by Chika and 𝐾𝐲, but she managed to counter their attacks with surprising agility. The rooftop became a battleground, with each girl vying for Izuku's attention, their fights escalating in intensity. Toga, using her unique abilities, manipulated the BLD spilled around her, creating additional limbs to assist in her combat. The chaos reached a peak as Rainier summoned multiple light spears, aiming to eliminate her rivals, only for Lucy to counter with a massive shadow arm, ready to clash. As the tension built, Izuku realized he needed to intervene. He called out for everyone to stop, and the girls froze, turning their attention to him. Removing his glasses, he addressed them, noticing their reactions to his unfiltered gaze. He acknowledged their feelings but questioned why they all loved him. The girls were taken aback by his inquiry. Izuku explained his past experiences with love, sharing a painful memory of betrayal that had left him wary of relationships. His vulnerability resonated with the girls, who began to understand the depth of his feelings and the reasons behind their own affections. As the atmosphere shifted, the girls contemplated their motivations, realizing that their fierce competition stemmed from genuine feelings for Izuku, each hoping to be the one to heal his heart. The scene set the stage for a deeper exploration of love, rivalry, and the complexities of their relationships moving forward. The blame fell on him, with accusations of abuse that nearly led to his incarceration. Fortunately, his sister and friends intervened, presenting the police with a video that cleared his name. The group was taken aback by this revelation, while Ayano gripped her staff tightly, fully aware of who Izuku was referring to. Izuku reflected on his past, expressing that he had chosen to focus solely on himself since that incident, avoiding any new relationships. Suddenly, he was tackled to the ground by Chika, who was crying, along with Meiha and Toyomi. The others couldn't help but shed tears upon hearing about Izuku's heartbreak. 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻 expressed her outrage, questioning how someone could treat him so poorly. Rainier echoed her sentiments, calling the person ungrateful. Rose mentioned Monica, who immediately began searching through the school's female student files. Izuku, feeling uneasy, urged Monica to hold off, insisting that he didn't want any of them to take action against her. He reassured them that his past was behind him and no longer mattered. Curiosity arose about why they all loved him. Ayano admired his handsomeness, while Rose praised his strength. Rainier noted his cute smile, and Kaguya appreciated him as a great guy. Chika affirmed he wasn't an unpleasant person, and Toyomi added that he wasn't creepy. Meiha mentioned how he helped her improve her family relationships, and Monica shared that he helped her move on from a past breakup. Izuku turned to 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻, recalling how she seemed uninterested when they first met. 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻 explained that he made her feel secure about her blind eye, which many had deemed unattractive. Izuku reassured her of her beauty, regardless of what others said, and she revealed that this was why she fell for him. As they expressed their feelings, Aoyano asked what he thought of her. Kaguya chimed in, teasingly prompting Aoyano to clarify her intentions. Toga suggested that Aoyano was asking if he would date all of them. Izuku was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. Aoyano clarified that it was somewhat along those lines. The girls eagerly confirmed their willingness to date him, with Kaguya, Chika, Meiha, and Toyomi all expressing enthusiasm. Lucy was open to sharing, while Rainier agreed. Rose hesitated, but Monica encouraged her to consider the fun they could have. Kodonoha also expressed her acceptance of the situation. Aoyano admitted her longing to keep him to herself but was comfortable with the decision. Izuku felt uncertain about his ability to please them all, but 𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻 reassured him that just being around him was a blessing. After some contemplation, he agreed to their arrangement. Suddenly, he was enveloped in hugs from all his newfound girlfriends, some smiling and others shedding tears of joy, their dreams finally realized. The yanderes proclaimed that their wishes had come true, while Kodonoha reminded him of his earlier reluctance to share. Rainier suggested sealing their bond, leaving Izuku momentarily confused. Snapped her fingers, and in an instant, she and the others teleported from the roof into a random hotel room. Izuku looked around, surprised, while some of the other girls shared his astonishment. Rainier confirmed that they were indeed in a 𝐿𝐴𝐻, and with a playful smirk, she pushed Izuku onto the bed, crawling toward him. Izuku blushed and felt a wave of panic wash over him. Rainier reassured him, telling him to relax and let her devote herself to him. Just then, Ayano pushed Rainier aside and kissed Izuku, making him blush even harder. As she pulled away, she removed her shirt, revealing her intentions. Kaguya then intervened, pushing Ayano aside, and Izuku was taken aback when he noticed Kaguya was already undressed. She unzipped his breathes, and the sight surprised everyone in the room. Izuku was about to ask if something was wrong when he was suddenly overwhelmed by a rush of sensations as Chika, Meiha, and Toyomi began to tease him. The other girls looked on disapprovingly, but their curiosity got the better of them, and they soon joined in. Izuku tried to protest, but Lucy and Rainier began to kiss his neck, causing him to shiver. Rose then playfully nibbled on his collarbone while Monica watched, clearly enjoying the scene. Izuku felt his quirk surging as 𝐻𝐿𝐴 suddenly took the lead, causing him to react instinctively. He lifted her up, and the unexpected movement surprised everyone. Izuku felt a mix of emotions as he tried to navigate the situation, apologizing to 𝐻𝐿𝐴 for his sudden actions. As the chaos continued, the girls began to argue over who would be next, their excitement palpable. Izuku, feeling overwhelmed, decided to change things up. He placed 𝐻𝐿𝐴 on the bed and lifted 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, moving into her, which elicited a surprised reaction from 𝐻𝐿𝐴. As Izuku sat on the edge of the bed, he began to help 𝐻𝐿𝐴, while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 took her turn. The atmosphere in the room shifted as the girls lost themselves in the moment, some passing out from the overwhelming sensations. Izuku and Aoyano found themselves lost in each other, both caught up in their own excitement. Aoyano urged him to pick her up, and as he did, she surprised him with her playful antics. Izuku felt the tension building, and he struggled with his thoughts as Aoyano giggled, clearly enjoying the moment. He realized he needed to pull away, but Aoyano was determined. The playful chaos continued as they navigated their feelings, each moment filled with excitement and anticipation. Izuku felt a wave of relief wash over him as he realized how close he had come to danger. As the hours passed and the sun dipped below the horizon, the scene shifted to the Yagi household. A police officer stood before the family, delivering unsettling news about the empty house where Izuku had been held. The officer informed them that no trace of Izuku was found, leaving 𝗧𝗓𝗠ori in a state of distress. He demanded to know if the person who had taken his son was still at large. The officer confirmed the grim reality, prompting 𝗧𝗓𝗠ori and Inko to express their determination to search for Izuku immediately. The officer urged them to wait, but Inko's maternal instincts kicked in, and she insisted on finding her son. Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting the tense atmosphere. Rei opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of Izuku, drenched in sweat. His family rushed to him, relief flooding the room as they embraced him. Inko, overwhelmed with joy, hugged Izuku tightly, not caring about his condition. Izuku reassured them, explaining that he had escaped from his captors, who had mentioned something about 𝗧𝗓𝗠ori and money, hinting at a ransom plot. 𝗧𝗓𝗠ori's concern deepened, but Izuku kept the identity of his captors to himself, not wanting to worry them further. As the conversation continued, Shoto pointed out Izuku's disheveled appearance, prompting Izuku to explain that he had been on the run for hours. Katsumi and Katsuki exchanged competitive remarks about finding the culprits, while Izuku decided it was time to clean up. He made his way upstairs, feeling the comfort of home wash over him. Once in his room, he rummaged through his clothes before taking a refreshing shower. After drying off and changing into his pajamas, he settled onto the couch, exhaustion taking over as he drifted off to sleep. In the quiet of the night, Lucy appeared, having followed him home. She whispered for him to relax and go to sleep, planting a gentle kiss on his cheek before fading into the shadows of his room. Izuku lay there, stunned by the unexpected turn of events, wondering what he had gotten himself into. To be continued. Shoka Todoroki observed the boys, Izuku, Makoto, Tatsumi, and 𝐼𝐶, gathered at Tatsumi's house, engrossed in a racing game on the living room TV. 𝐼𝐶 broke the silence, curious about Izuku's recent ordeal. He mentioned hearing that Izuku had been kidnapped. Makoto, surprised, echoed 𝐼𝐶's inquiry, while Tatsumi asked when it had happened. Izuku confirmed it was a few days ago and questioned how 𝐼𝐶 had found out but not the others. 𝐼𝐶 shrugged, claiming he heard it through the grapevine. Izuku expressed his disappointment that 𝐼𝐶 hadn't come to look for him, but 𝐼𝐶 assured him he had been searching, albeit the city was vast. Izuku acknowledged this, stating he was fine now. Just then, Izuku's phone buzzed, revealing it was Aoyano calling for the 14th time that day. As he reached for it, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 snatched the phone and tossed it onto the couch, urging Izuku to focus on the game instead. Izuku protested, noting the call could be important, but 𝐬𝐮𝐬 insisted it could wait, encouraging him to relax. The boys heard the phone vibrate again, but after a few moments, it fell silent. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 encouraged Izuku to concentrate on the game, but the phone rang once more, prompting 𝐬𝐮𝐬 to pause the game so Izuku could take the call. Izuku stepped away to chat with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 remarked that ever since Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 started dating, she had been interrupting their time together. Makoto defended her, saying she was just looking out for Izuku. Tatsumi pointed out that Izuku had been kidnapped, which was a valid reason for concern. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 acknowledged this but noted that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had called multiple times, suggesting she should know Izuku was okay. Tatsumi agreed it was a bit annoying, but Makoto urged them not to be harsh. He then shifted the conversation to Tatsumi, teasing him about a girl who had been calling his phone incessantly. Tatsumi defended his friend 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, stating she was just concerned for him. The banter continued, with Makoto mentioning his sister, prompting 𝐬𝐮𝐬 to express surprise at her existence. Makoto insisted she wasn't annoying, but Tatsumi pointed out her overprotectiveness, recalling a time she had nearly harmed them over a prank. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 was intrigued, and Tatsumi recounted the story of how he had been robbed, only to find a girl waiting for him with his stolen belongings afterward. Makoto chimed in, recalling the girl's name, 𝐂𝐿, and Tatsumi was impressed he remembered. As the conversation flowed, Makoto excused himself, heading to the downstairs hallway to look something up on his phone. He recalled his grandfather's warning about yanderes, which sparked a memory of a sad moment in the hospital where his grandfather had shared a crucial piece of advice. The memory faded, and Makoto was left stunned by the implications of what he had learned. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a text from Tenko, followed by a barrage of messages. From Mikan, Sayaka, and Pikoyama. Overwhelmed, Makoto turned off his phone and rushed back to the others, who were equally confused by the sudden influx of notifications. They all realized they needed to leave quickly, but when they looked for Izuku, he was nowhere to be found. The three boys exchanged worried glances, realizing they were now in a precarious situation. The three boys turned around and ran toward the front door. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 slammed into it, falling to the floor. Makoto tried opening the door, but the doorknob wouldn't budge. Then Tatsumi moved Makoto out of the way and attempted to kick the door open, but it remained shut. Tatsumi exclaimed that the front door wouldn't open, while 𝐬𝐮𝐬 panicked, declaring they were trapped. Makoto, however, was determined, insisting they weren't stuck. He dashed into the living room, grabbed a video game controller, and threw it at the window. The window cracked but didn't break. Makoto urged the others to find something else to throw. The boys searched around until 𝐬𝐮𝐬 picked up Tatsumi's entire couch and hurled it at the window. The couch shattered the glass and created a large hole in the wall. The three boys quickly escaped from Tatsumi's house. Outside, they ran through the streets late at night, frightened that someone was hunting them. Tatsumi wondered what they should do, while 𝐬𝐮𝐬 suggested splitting up. Makoto firmly disagreed, insisting they needed to stick together and hide. Tatsumi added that splitting up never ended well. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 conceded and asked someone to lead the way. Tatsumi took off in a different direction, with the others following closely behind. After running down the sidewalk for 12 minutes, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 grew tired and stopped. Makoto encouraged him to keep going, but 𝐬𝐮𝐬, breathing heavily, suggested they leave him behind. Reluctantly, Makoto ran off, but 𝐬𝐮𝐬 shouted for him to come back, claiming he was just kidding. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 chased after Makoto, who was still following Tatsumi. When Makoto turned the corner, Tatsumi was nowhere in sight. Panicking, Makoto urged 𝐬𝐮𝐬 to go back. Makoto ran back toward 𝐬𝐮𝐬, who saw him approaching. As Makoto rushed past the exhausted 𝐬𝐮𝐬, he called out for him to wait. With a groan, Makoto helped 𝐬𝐮𝐬 run at his pace, and the two continued until they rushed into a convenience store. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 shouted for help, claiming they were being hunted down. Makoto tried to calm him, but a random stranger behind the counter scoffed and asked what was happening. Makoto explained their situation and asked if they could stay until sunrise. The stranger refused, pointing out that the sign said they were open 24/. When Makoto and Issei hesitated to take the stranger's place, he angrily told them to leave. Makoto protested, stating they didn't need to shout, but Issei pleaded for help, mentioning their missing friends. The stranger, unimpressed, grabbed a broom and playfully swatted both boys on the head, causing them to run around the store in a panic before eventually escaping. As the stranger returned to the break room, he heard the store doors open again. Curious, he stepped outside and was taken aback by the sight of Zenobia, who greeted him with a simple, "Hi." Zenobia swiftly eliminated the threat, her decisive action leaving no room for hesitation. She then moved behind the register and into the break room, where she found the computer containing all the camera footage. With determination, she destroyed it completely, ensuring no trace remained. Once finished, she set off to track down Issei. Meanwhile, Issei and Makoto were hiding under a parked car on the side of the street. Issei questioned the choice of their hiding spot, to which Makoto replied that he didn't see a better option. Issei then asked what they were running from, and Makoto explained the concept of a yandere, a girl who appeared sweet but was dangerously obsessed. The realization hit Issei hard, and he wondered if that was what had happened to their friends, Izuku and Tatsumi. Makoto suggested they bunker down at his house, which was nearby, while Issei noted that his house was 6 blocks away. They decided to head to Makoto's place. After a tense 10-minute run, they barged inside and locked the front door, both boys breathing heavily. They felt a moment of relief, but Kamaru soon appeared, greeting Makoto and asking about Issei's presence. Makoto assured her that Issei was a friend and that it was fine for him to stay the night. Once in Makoto's room, he flopped onto his bed while Issei settled into a bean bag in the corner. They pondered if they were the last two alive and decided to call their friends to check on them. However, after several attempts, it became clear that their friends were unreachable, leading to a growing sense of dread. Makoto's mind raced with possibilities, fearing the worst. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Makoto opened it to find Rias, who had come looking for Issei. Confusion filled the room as Issei realized he hadn't informed her of his whereabouts. In a moment of panic, Makoto slammed the door shut and rushed to the window, warning Issei that Rias was a yandere. Before they could react further, Rias kicked the door off its hinges and entered, startling both boys. In a desperate attempt to escape, Makoto jumped out of the window, while Issei found himself caught by Rias, who subdued him with a chloroform rag, whispering sweetly to him as he lost consciousness. Rias then looked out the broken window to see Makoto being carried away by Kamaru, piecing together her plan. Hours later, Issei awoke to find himself tied to a chair in a dark warehouse alongside Makoto, Tatsumi, and Izuku. They quickly realized they were not alone, as several familiar faces emerged from the shadows, each girl expressing her affection for the boys in a rather overwhelming manner. The boys were taken aback by the unexpected gathering, unsure of how to respond to the declarations of love from their yanderes. As the scene unfolded, Tatsumi found himself waking up in bed, snuggled up to something soft and warm. He blinked in confusion, only to find Leon smiling at him. After a moment of realization, he blushed and questioned how she had gotten into his room. Leon playfully reminded him of the previous day's events, leaving Tatsumi flustered and unsure of what had truly happened. The other girls began to wake up, each one adding to the confusion and surprise of the morning, leaving Tatsumi to wonder what exactly had transpired. What a surprising turn of events for Tatsumi. He found himself surrounded by the girls, who revealed that they had all shown their affection for him in a rather overwhelming way. Tatsumi was taken aback, trying to process what had happened. The girls expressed their feelings, assuring him that they all cared for him, even if they sometimes disagreed. As Tatsumi attempted to piece together the previous night, he recalled the last thing he remembered, playing video games with his friends before everything changed. Suddenly, he realized that the girls had feelings for him, and they were all willing to share that affection. He was astonished by their openness. Before Tatsumi could ask what they wanted to do next, Death pulled him into a warm embrace, resting his head against her. The other girls watched with mixed feelings. 𝐻𝐿, however, reminded them that they needed to go grocery shopping. Tatsumi was confused at first, thinking their home was well stocked. She'll confirmed that they would likely need more supplies since they were all staying together. Just then, Tatsumi remembered his parents and worried about what they would think. Chelsea reassured him, saying they were on vacation. Curious, Tatsumi asked how she knew this. Chelsea got up, retrieved a note from his desk, and handed it to him. As he read the note, he learned that his parents were on a cruise, leaving him in charge of the house until they returned. Tatsumi sighed, realizing this was not the first time he had been left alone. The girls reacted with surprise, recalling how he had been in a similar situation when he was younger. She'll suggested that they forget about everything and enjoy the sunshine instead. Tatsumi agreed, getting up to head for his closet. The girls exchanged knowing glances and nodded in unison. As soon as Tatsumi left the room, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 took charge, instructing someone to look up the cruise ship numbers currently at sea. Chelsea confirmed she was already on it, while 𝐻𝐿 added that they should also hire as many pirates and mercenaries as possible from the dark web. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 remarked that this would be the last time Tatsumi's parents enjoyed quality time together. Meanwhile, Issei sat at the dinner table, surrounded by Rias, Akino, Asia, Kaneko, Zenobia, and Irina, all glaring at one another while he quietly ate his cereal. He attempted to break the tension by asking how everyone was feeling, only to receive a collective response of anger. When he probed further, the atmosphere shifted to one of frustration. Suddenly, Akino unleashed a bolt of lightning at Zenobia, who was caught off guard. Kaneko quickly charged at Asia, who managed to block the punch with a shield. Rias slammed her hand on the table, sending everyone flying against the wall. Rias declared herself in charge, prompting Akino to question if she was the best girl. In retaliation, Rias fired a series of flaming blasts at Akino, who countered with an electrical shield. Kaneko then blitzed Rias, landing a punch that sent her crashing into the wall. Irina attempted to strike Kaneko but was dodged, only to receive a punch in the gut. Asia seized the moment to douse Kaneko with cold water, causing her to leap up and cling to the ceiling. Akino took advantage of the chaos to electrocute Asia, knocking her unconscious. As the battle escalated, Zenobia tried to stab Akino but missed, receiving a spin kick to the face instead. Rias tackled Akino, and the two began rolling on the ground, exchanging blows. The rest of the girls joined in, each trying to outdo the other, leaving Issei in shock at the scene unfolding before him. Just then, Alexandra entered the room, demanding to know what was happening. Issei quickly tried to cover up the chaos, but Alexandra was not fooled. She scolded him for the mess and reminded him that their parents were away on vacation, leaving just the two of them. She warned him not to invite any friends over, especially not his usual crowd. Issei was surprised to learn their parents had left for Africa, but Alexandra allowed Izuku to be an exception. As Alexandra headed to the car, Issei noticed Rias aiming a crossbow at her and panicked, trying to prevent any harm. Rias expressed her frustration at being stopped from taking action. Issei explained that Alexandra was his sister, and despite her flaws, he didn't want to lose her. Rias reluctantly agreed not to harm her, though she had other plans in mind. Issei decided to head to the grocery store, telling the girls they could do whatever they wanted until he returned. They enthusiastically agreed and began plotting to follow him. Meanwhile, Makoto was hiding behind the family couch as his own group of yanderes clashed over who would hold his hand first. Makuro attempted to stab Junko, who narrowly dodged and retaliated with a spin kick that sent Makuro crashing into the wall. Piko then charged at Makuro with her katana, leading to a fierce standoff. Kamaru was trying to set Sayaka on fire with a lighter and spray can, while Mikan intervened, throwing a book to knock the lighter away. As chaos erupted, Makoto called out for everyone to stop, expressing his confusion and concern over their behavior. The girls paused, turning their attention to him. Makoto explained that he didn't understand why they were fighting when he could simply hold all their hands separately. The realization dawned on them, and the tension began to ease. Mikan expressed her fear, questioning whether everyone truly loved her. In a moment of vulnerability, she revealed that if someone asked her to harm herself, she would comply without hesitation. Makoto was taken aback by her words, his shock evident as he processed the gravity of her statement. Mikan hesitated, unsure why Makoto would think she would say something like that. She considered it just a thought. Makoto, however, urged her to stop thinking that way, insisting she was too appealing to have such thoughts. Mikan felt a rush of excitement at the compliment, while Makoto's friends envied her. Makoto then confessed that he had significant baggage. Mukuro inquired about what he meant, and Junko asked if he liked boys. Makoto quickly clarified that he wasn't gay, which relieved Junko. He then proceeded to explain the situation to the girls, surprising them, except for Kamaru and Yuruko, who were already aware. Toko expressed disbelief, asking if Makoto was saying his older brother had unpaid debts to the Tiger Yakuza. Tenko added that it was the Demon Triad, while Mukuro mentioned the Dragon Mafia. Kyoko pointed out that ever since his brother went into hiding, they had been trying to capture Makoto to get to him. Makoto confirmed that he was essentially a walking target and expressed his genuine feelings for the girls. Kamaru was excited, but Makoto reminded her that she was his sister and needed to think clearly. He then expressed his concern for their safety, suggesting that if they loved him, they should let him go. Before he could finish, Tenko tackled him onto the couch, squeezing him tightly and declaring she would never let him go. Kyoko assured him that even if he was a target, they would protect him. Junko added that if it meant taking on dangerous criminal organizations, they would do it. Pikoyama expressed her willingness to fight for him, while Mikan declared her disdain for his brother and his gambling issues. Sayaka echoed her sentiment, calling his behavior cowardly. Kamaru reassured Makoto that they had his back. Makoto felt grateful for their support, but Junko interrupted with a playful remark that caught him off guard. In a sudden flurry of activity, chaos erupted as Tenko, Pikoyama, Sayaka, and others engaged in a playful fight, leaving Makoto exasperated. Meanwhile, Izuku was brushing his teeth, feeling uneasy under the watchful gaze of his sister, Izumi. She asked if someone was sleeping in his room, to which he denied. Izumi, unconvinced, inspected his face and discovered a strand of silver hair, which startled Izuku. He tried to downplay the situation, but Izumi became increasingly aggressive, pushing him against the wall and revealing a razor blade hidden in her toothbrush. Izuku was taken aback, trying to calm her down. However, Izumi unexpectedly kissed him, leaving him in shock. He managed to push her away, feeling the need to assert his boundaries. Izumi playfully insisted on claiming what she believed was hers, while Izuku firmly rejected her advances. Outside the bathroom, Izuku's friends could hear the commotion and wondered if they should intervene. Nagenda advised against it, stating it was something Izuku needed to handle himself. Toga suggested they could help, but Nagenda insisted it was a matter between siblings. The tension escalated as Izumi declared her intentions, and Izuku prepared to confront her, determined to set things right. Izumi was sent flying through the bathroom wall, crashing into the hallway wall, and finally landing against her room wall. Izuku looked at the holes in the walls before turning to his friends. They had been listening in on his fight. Lucy mentioned that they were going to join him for his morning shower but decided to eavesdrop instead. Aoyama asked about the move Izuku had just used. Izuku explained that it was called Black Flash, a technique taught to him by a friend. Ayano teased him, wondering if this friend was another girl, to which Izuku quickly replied no. Rose reminded him that his parents were on vacation in America, which surprised him. Monica chimed in, saying that meant they had the whole house to themselves, and Izuku's HRM excitedly agreed, hinting at the freedom they now had. The scene shifted to Izuku sitting on the couch, staring at Izumi, who wore a smile. His Yandere friends surrounded them, keeping a watchful eye on Izumi. Izumi confessed that she had been in love with him since they were 10 years old. Izuku was taken aback, questioning how that could be since they were siblings. Izumi insisted that one of them must be adopted, and Monica seemed to enjoy the banter. Izumi then suggested imagining starting a family together, but Izuku firmly rejected the idea, seeing her as his sister. Toga interjected, claiming that Izuku would never love Izumi like he loved them. Izumi retorted, saying she wasn't the only one in love with him, revealing that Katsumi and Shoka also had feelings for him. Izuku wasn't surprised, recalling the school prom incident when Shoka tried to dance with him, leading to a chaotic fight between her and Katsumi that resulted in several injuries. Before Izumi could call them, the front door burst open, and Katsumi and Shoka entered, confused by the scene. Monika quickly filled them in on everything that had happened. Katsumi and Shoka listened intently, surprised to learn that Izuku was already aware of their feelings. Shoka, feeling bold, jumped into Izuku's arms and kissed him, only for Katsumi to pull her away and kiss him as well. She then lifted Izuku, declaring that she had been planning this for months. The atmosphere shifted as the other girls expressed their eagerness to join in. Izuku, overwhelmed, tried to set boundaries, but the excitement escalated. Katsumi led the charge upstairs, followed by the other girls, leaving Izumi behind with a mischievous grin. She grabbed her laptop, revealing that she had set up a camera in Izuku's room. Meanwhile, Izuku and his 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 took some time to clean up and prepare for a trip to the store. As they gathered, Izuku laid down some ground rules for their public behavior, hoping to avoid any unnecessary drama. The girls agreed, and they set off down the sidewalk. As they walked, they received curious glances from passers-by. After a while, they arrived at the supermart. Izuku suggested they split up to gather supplies, but the girls quickly began to argue over who would stay with him. Shoka and Izuku walked away from the group, teasing the others as they did. Inside the store, they encountered Makoto, who was already shopping with Mikan, Sayaka, and Pikoyama. While Makoto pondered which fruits to buy, the girls exchanged wary glances, each plotting against the others. Makoto asked for their opinions on fruits, and they began to bicker over their preferences, unaware of the brewing tension among them. The atmosphere was charged with competition, setting the stage for what was to come. As Pikoyama prepared to grab her item, Mikan reached for a syringe. Suddenly, they all paused when Makoto returned. He announced that it was time to move on to the next aisle. The group, consisting of Mikan, Pikoyama, Sayaka, and Makoto, proceeded from the fruit aisle to the wheat aisle. As they walked down the aisle, Mikan noticed a sign that read, "The Bread Bank." At that moment, 𝐬𝐮𝐸 unexpectedly emerged from a pile of bread, startling Mikan as he stood atop a shopping cart with a wide grin. He enthusiastically welcomed them to the bread bank, proclaiming that they sold bread and loaves. Makoto chimed in, stating they had bread on deck, while 𝐬𝐮𝐸 added that there was bread on the floor. The two boys shared a laugh and a fist bump, prompting Pikoyama to put away her katana, reassured by Makoto's familiarity with 𝐬𝐮𝐸. Makoto greeted 𝐬𝐮𝐸 warmly, and they exchanged pleasantries. Makoto mentioned he was just shopping and needed a baguette and a brioche. 𝐬𝐮𝐸 informed him that those items were unavailable but suggested gluten-free white bread or potato bread instead. Makoto reacted with disbelief, expressing his disdain for gluten, regardless of its cost. 𝐬𝐮𝐸 playfully challenged him, suggesting they could settle it with a fight, while Makoto joked about recording it with his dollar store camera. Tatsumi then entered the scene, questioning the situation. The three boys erupted into laughter, nearly collapsing from amusement. As they began to calm down, Makoto shared how funny the moment was, while Mikan, Pikoyama, and Sayaka looked on, puzzled. Sayaka asked what had just happened, and Makoto explained it was a video they found online. Rias appeared, looking for 𝐬𝐮𝐸, who replied that he was making memories with his friends. Leon then called out to Tatsumi, who realized he needed to leave and quickly ran off to join her and the others. Meanwhile, Izuku and Shoka were in the meat aisle. Izuku mentioned he could make burgers but would need a lot of beef. Shoka expressed her surprise, learning that he could cook. He shared that his mother had taught him and even created a cookbook of her recipes. As Izuku moved to grab a lobster, he accidentally brushed against someone else's hand, apologizing for the unexpected contact. Miss Shoko noticed Izuku and expressed her surprise at seeing him there. Izuku replied that it was nice to see her as well. Shoko, reminding herself to stay calm, thought that she was just the school nurse and didn't have any particular feelings for Izuku. She then asked about his stitches, to which Izuku responded that they were good and he could stretch without feeling any pain. Shoko smiled and said that was great. Izuku was not exactly alone, he had just split up with his friends. Shoko, curious, asked if they were together, to which Izuku replied that it was complicated. He then offered her a lobster, but Shoko declined, wanting to see what he could do with it. She suggested coming over for dinner, But Izuku hesitated, unsure if his parents would mind. Shoko reassured him, and just then, Shoka approached, greeting Shoko. Izuku decided to continue looking around, leaving Shoko and Shoka to talk. Shoko smiled and teased Shoka about her relationship with Izuku, congratulating her. Shoka sensed a hint of jealousy in Shoko's tone, but Shoko insisted that young love was a wonderful thing. She then advised Shoka to keep Izuku close, warning her that someone might try to steal him away. Suddenly, a guy appeared, holding Izuku's lobster high above his head, taunting him for being too short to reach it. Izuku, feeling frustrated, decided he had enough. He grabbed the guy by the collar and tossed him aside, catching the lobster just in time before it hit the ground. He thought to himself that he might need to get another lobster, considering where the guy's hands had been. Shoko complimented Izuku on his quick thinking, and he modestly brushed it off, while Shoka expressed her readiness to leave. As they exited the meat aisle, Izuku called out to his friends, asking them to meet at the checkout area. After a few minutes, everyone gathered together. They exchanged greetings, and Izuku noticed that some of them were getting along surprisingly well, which made him uneasy. Issei shared his thoughts on the situation, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 suggested they head out since they had everything they needed. They all proceeded to different checkout lanes and, after a brief wait, left the store and headed home. Issei felt pleased to have seen his friends again, but was soon confronted by Rias, who reminded him that he hadn't asked for permission to wander around. In a surprising turn, Rias playfully kissed Issei, leaving the other girls annoyed. She then instructed Akino to prepare something special when they got home, which made Issei anxious. Meanwhile, Tatsumi was being pulled along by 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who was upset with him for leaving without notice. He tried to apologize, but before he knew it, he was pushed into an alleyway, where Leon caught him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵 expressed her frustration and made it clear that she accepted his apology, but then surprised him with an unexpected advance. Tatsumi was taken aback, concerned about being caught outside, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵 assured him that they would continue their conversation at home. As Tatsumi made a quick escape from the alley, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵 and her friends chased after him, each motivated by their own reasons. Back at home, Makoto was greeted by an enthusiastic Tenko, who tackled him as soon as he arrived. Kamaru and Yuruko joined in, leading to a playful tug-of-war over him until chaos erupted. Makoto, realizing he needed to find a way to avoid the impending disaster, sought refuge in a makeshift bunker. Meanwhile, Izuku returned home with the groceries, happy to be surrounded by his friends. He asked for dinner ideas, and the girls began suggesting various dishes, each one more enthusiastic than the last. Just then, a knock at the door startled everyone. Izuku calmed the girls and opened the door, surprised to see Shoko with a shrimp cocktail. She introduced her friend, who seemed to take an interest in Izuku, causing him to feel a bit uneasy as the girls eyed the newcomers suspiciously. Izuku sat at the table in silence, his charm gazing at the two newcomers, Shoko and Himino, who had just joined them. The tension in the air felt thick enough to cut. He finally broke the silence by asking Himino about her hobbies. She casually mentioned enjoying drinks, snacks, and sleep, but added with a playful tone that revealing her job would require drastic measures. Aoyano, sitting nearby, stabbed her fork into the table, glaring at Himino, who responded with an innocent smile, assuring everyone she was just joking. As the conversation continued, Shoko inquired about the food, expressing curiosity about who had prepared it. Himino enthusiastically praised the lo mein, suggesting the cook deserved a compliment. Aoyano claimed responsibility for the dish, leading to a light-hearted exchange about the noodles. The atmosphere lightened as they discussed the meal, though some critiques were thrown in about the shrimp cocktail sauce and the chips. Izuku, feeling a bit out of place, finally took a bite of shrimp but ended up choking, prompting a flurry of panic among the girls. Najenda quickly stepped in, performing the Heimlich maneuver until Izuku coughed up the shrimp. Shoko inspected the remnants and realized a piece of shell had slipped through. While the others expressed their concern, Izuku reassured them he was fine, though Himino teased him about needing a kiss to feel better. Deciding to take a break, Izuku excused himself to the bathroom. Meanwhile, Aoyano confronted Shoko and Himino, making it clear they needed to be careful. As Izuku texted his friends, he felt a mix of relief and apprehension about the chaos that was unfolding. At another table, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 was nursing his own discomfort from earlier encounters with the girls. Asia checked on him, and Akino admitted they might have gone a bit overboard. Just then, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐽 received a text from Izuku, prompting a series of inquiries from the girls about who was messaging him. Rias insisted on seeing his phone, and after a brief moment, she handed it back, satisfied. Back at Izuku's table, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A loud crash interrupted his thoughts, and he rushed downstairs to find the dining area in disarray. Food was scattered everywhere, and the girls were in the midst of a chaotic scuffle. Using his quirk to amplify his voice, he commanded everyone to stop, drawing their attention. Izuku expressed his disbelief at how quickly things had escalated. Katsumi sheepishly admitted to their carefulness in creating the mess, while others apologized. Just as Izuku attempted to regain control, he slipped on a shrimp shell but was saved from falling by Rose, who glared at Shoko for the hazardous shrimp cocktail. With a collective sigh, Izuku suggested they clean up the mess together. As the girls began to tidy up, the atmosphere shifted back to a more cooperative spirit, though the remnants of their earlier chaos lingered in the air. As Izuku watched the girl thoroughly clean the kitchen, dining room, and living room, he marveled at how spotless everything looked. Monica, with a confident smile, declared that as his future wife, she would ensure all his needs were met. Rainier interjected, claiming she would be the future wife instead, to which Lucy questioned her authority. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 chimed in, teasing Rainier about her inability to handle Izuku. Toga, not to be outdone, remarked that being a wife involved more than just physical intimacy. Tensions escalated when 𝐻𝐿𝐴 punched Toga, sending her spiraling into the couch. Toga retaliated with a sharp remark, and in a flurry of motion, she drew 2 daggers and leaped at 𝐻𝐿𝐴. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 swiftly grabbed Toga and slammed her to the ground, preparing to strike again until Toga managed to kick her in the face and escape. Meanwhile, Rainier grabbed a chair and swung it at Lucy, who responded by summoning a scythe and charging at Rainier. The two engaged in a fierce duel atop the dining table. Kaguya and Chika leaped at Kotonoha, who deftly backflipped away, drawing her blade and pursuing them with determination. Aoyano found herself tackled to the ground by Monica, who attempted to stab her with a knife. In a quick move, Aoyano tossed Monoma off her and hurled a plate at Monica, who ducked and dashed toward her. The girls continued their chaotic battle, each trying to outmaneuver the others. Amid the chaos, Meiha suddenly noticed something amiss and exclaimed that Izuku was missing. The girls paused, scanning the area for him, but he was nowhere to be found downstairs. Panic set in until they heard noises coming from upstairs. They realized that Rose, Shoko, and Himino were also absent. With determination, the girls rushed upstairs, and Toga kicked the door open, revealing Shoko and Himino playfully engaging with Izuku, while Rose was tied up in the corner of the room. Himino greeted the girls with a playful tone, inviting them to join in the fun. As the scene unfolded, Himino and Shoko exchanged kisses, and the atmosphere became charged with excitement. The girls watched, feeling a mix of emotions as they witnessed the playful antics. Izuku's other admirers, feeling left out, expressed their frustration, wanting to be included. Izuku, caught in the whirlwind of attention, tried to reason with them, but the excitement escalated, leading to a chaotic pile-up that caused the bed to collapse under the weight of the girls. Later that night, as the girls slept with satisfied smiles, Izuku took it upon himself to clean up the mess they had made. Just then, Izumi appeared, having heard the commotion. She offered to help, but Izuku insisted he could manage on his own. As she headed back to her room, she playfully hinted that she would claim her place one day. Izuku sighed, contemplating the challenges ahead, especially with Izumi. He wondered what he would do about her as he continued tidying up. The night was far from over, and the adventures were just beginning.